In 1985, for the first time, we accepted new students from diploma to bachelor degree under the name of the Public Health Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Diponegoro. In 1987, the Public Health Study Program began admitting students for the regular program for the first time. In 1993, the Public Health Study Program changed to the Faculty of Public Health based on the decree of the Minister of Education and Culture of the Republic of Indonesia, number 0369/0/1993, dated 21st November 1993. Faculty of Public Health Vision. In the year of 2024, Faculty of Public Health becomes an excellent higher education institution in the field of public health in the international level. Faculty of Public Health are concerned in achieving the following objectives: to obtain graduates who have the spirit of Pancasila, competent, have social awareness, and have the Undip's graduate profile that are complete and miracle. Complete, communicator, professional, leader, entrepreneur, thinker, educator, and miracle, manager, innovator, researcher, apprentice, communitarian, leader, and educator. To obtain innovative research and beneficial products to solve public health problems and to achieve world-class university. To obtain publications in reputable national and international journals, attainments in intellectual property rights that beneficial to the development of public health to support world-class university. To contribute in the public health problems solving in regional, national, and international level. To organize transparent and accountable public health higher education in accordance with applicable regulation supported by technology advances. To organize cooperation and partnership in education, research, publication, product innovation, and community services in public health aspects with public and private institutions in national and international level. The organizational structure in Faculty of Public Health. Faculty leaders. The Dean, the Vice Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, the Vice Dean for Resources. The study programs in Faculty of Public Health are Bachelor in Public Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Public Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Environmental Health, accredited as Excellent, Master in Health Promotion, accredited as Excellent, Doctor in Public Health, accredited as Excellent. The implementation of the education program in the Faculty of Public Health is supported by lecturers from reputable universities. Currently, the faculty has 34 lecturers with doctoral degrees of 66 lecturers with various scientific fields. They are Health Policy and Administration, Public Health Nutrition, Epidemiology and Tropical Diseases, Occupational Safety and Health, Environmental Health, Biostatistic and Population, and Health Promotion and Behavioral Sciences. In the learning process, the Faculty of Public Health is supported by education staff from various backgrounds, competencies, and professionalism. The buildings in Faculty of Public Health are Building A, the Dean Building with 2 stories. Building B, classrooms with 3 stories. Building C, lecturers' room with 2 stories and meeting rooms. Building D, secretariat room of graduate study programs. Classrooms for graduate programs. Computer laboratory. Public Health Laboratory, Unit Room of Faculty Supports, and Hall. Building E, Students Activities Room. Building F, Student Activity Center, Praying Room, and Canteen. Building G, Secretariat Room of Undergraduate Study Programs, Library, Archive Rooms, and Student Activities Rooms, and also other facilities such as canteen, futsal field, basketball field, volleyball field, and other sport facilities. To support student learning process, the Faculty of Public Health has 6 laboratories: Basic Biomedicine Laboratory, Environmental Health Laboratory, Occupational Safety and Health Laboratory, Epidemiology and Entomology Laboratory, Public Health Nutrition Laboratory, and Audio-Visual Aids Laboratory. The Faculty of Public Health has accepted international students since 2016 for degree and non-degree programs in order to support Universitas Diponegoro to be the world-class university. The non-degree programs, such as summer course program, internship program, joint research, and community services, are followed by students from many countries such as Taiwan, Netherlands, Australia, Germany, China, Pakistan, Sudan, Libya, USA, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Nigeria, and many more. Other international programs to support world-class university are visiting professors from overseas universities, International Conference on Public Health for Tropical and Coastal Development, staff exchange, lecture joint research between universities and with international NGOs. Student activities, internship, partnership with villages related to maternal health, field study practices, outbound, community services, student units activities, Research Center of Faculty of Public Health, Research Center of Environment and Toxic Material, Research Center of Neglected Tropical Diseases, Research Center of Reproductive Health and HIV/AIDS, Research Center of Public Health Nutrition, Research Center of Health Policy.
Baik, selamat pagi Bu Yusniar, selamat pagi dosen, dan selamat pagi pembicara kami.
Ya, selamat pagi, Karisti.
Karena waktu sudah tepat menunjukkan pukul 9, apakah kegiatannya sudah dapat dimulai, Bu?
Silakan.
Okay, please allow us to start this meeting, Mr. and Mrs. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Best wishes for all of us. My name is Karisti Jasiela. It is a wonderful and precious chance for me, your Master of Ceremony on this very special occasion. The visiting lecture about applied toxicology in industry environment. The master's section on environmental health of the undergrad public health study program, Faculty of Public Health, Diponegoro University. First of all, let's say thank to God who has been giving us guidance, happiness, healthy, and mercy so we can attend and participate in this meeting without any obstacles. In this beautiful moment, I would like to welcome to our speaker at our event today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, today our speaker is Dr. Agus Salim bin Muhammad Banon as Public Health Medicine Specialist Consultant, Occupational Physician, Malaysia. Okay, thank you, sir. The Honorable Mr. Dr. Budiono SKM MKes, Dean of FKM Undip. Good morning, sir. The Honorable Mr. Dr. Nurjazuli SKM MKes, the Deputy Dean 1 of FKM Undip. Good morning, sir. The Honorable Mrs. Dr. Yusniar Hanani Darundiati, STP MKes, Chair of the Department in Environmental Health. Good morning, Madam.
Good morning.
The Honorable Lecturer of the Environmental Health Section Study Program Bachelor of Public Health and all FKM Undip lecturers and academic community. Good morning. Once again, we thank you for the presence of Mr. and Mrs. Lecturer. Welcome to all participants of the visiting lecture present today. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin this event, let us pray together according to its religion and belief. May God make this event beneficial for all of us, and this event will be conducive. Let us start praying. Finish? Okay, the next agenda is all participants listen to the Indonesia Raya song. For the committee, please display the song. Thank you. For the next agenda, I immediately invite the Dean of FKM Undip, Mr. Dr. Budiono SKM MKes, to give his remarks and continue for the opening of the Environmental Health Visiting Lecture activities formally. To Mr. Dr. Budiono SKM MKes, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
resources Dr. Kartini, and lecturers and also participants, especially Dr. Agus Salim bin Muhammad, public health medication specialist consultant, also occupational physician, head of department of environmental health, public health, curriculum, moderator Dr. Yusina Nani dan Diati.
Excuse me, Mr. Budiono, but your sound is look like trouble.
First of all, let's say praise to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who gives a sense of effort to us after this recipe. This program includes students of the public university, lecturers, and the department of environmental health, participants from maybe from the other institution. We know that toxicology is a very important science. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will continue my speech remark. Toxicology is a field of science that help us to understand the harmful effect of the chemicals or toxic substances. Toxicology also use the power of science to predict what, how chemical may cause harm, and then also shares that information to protect public health. Many factors, including the amount of and duration of exposure, I think, and individual susceptibility to a substance or hazardous substance. And a person age also and the factor that influence the toxic chemical, and all the impacts whether a person will develop a disease or not. So many factors influence person will develop disease or not, including amount of and duration of exposure, susceptibility, age, and maybe also sex. All substances have potentials to be toxic if given to human or other living organism in certain conditions and certain dose or concentration or level. The toxicologists also realize that even low dose exposure that may seem insignificant may have biological meaning or lead to adverse health effect if the exposure is continuous or happen during critical window of development. For example, for children or a pregnant woman. Toxicology also provides critical information and knowledge that can be used by regulatory agencies, for example, a government or company, decision makers and others to put program and policies in place to limit our exposure to these chemical substances or hazardous substances. Thereby preventing or reducing the likelihood that a disease or other negative health effect or health outcome would occur. Other benefit of the toxicology is government agencies have a sound scientific basis for establishing regulation and policies aimed at protecting and preserving human health and also the environment. Companies such as chemical company or pharmaceutical company are able to develop safer products, for example, drugs, and also workplaces of those companies. Consumers have access to information that helps them make decisions about their own health and prevent diseases. So I believe in Dr. Agus Salim bin Muhammad Banon. He is an expert who has so many experience in applied toxicology, especially in industrial. And he will explain the topic briefly, I think. Hopefully, Dr. Agus Salim bin Muhammad Banon, our colleagues, lecturers, students, and the participants will enjoy the seminar, and I hope it will be an active discussion and success for you all. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to Mr. Dr. Budiono, SKM MKes, for the remarks and opening of this visiting lecture. Thus, our activities this morning have officially opened. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can turn on the camera by replacing the background with a virtual background that we have shared in the Zoom chat. We will share attendance link via chat Zoom at the end of the material presentation session or before discussion. Filling in the attendance list is a requirement for the issuance of a certificate. Saya akan mengulangi sekali lagi menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Saya mengharapkan kepada seluruh peserta untuk dapat menyalakan kamera dan menggunakan virtual background yang sudah tersedia melalui Zoom meeting kita kali ini. Dapat dilihat melalui kolom chat. Kami akan membagikan link presensi ketika sesi diskusi berlangsung dan harap untuk kepada seluruh peserta dapat mengisi link presensi tersebut untuk syarat mendapatkan sertifikat. We will inform the certificate and materials via email. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're still morning and fresh. It's better if we take a documentation first. So, I hope you can turn on the camera and we will take a photo first. Okay. Okay, some of us already turn on the camera. I hope another one can turn on the camera too, so we can take the photo. Okay, maybe some of us already turn on the camera. We will start to take the documentation. Okay, let's start with the formal style first. I will count in the 3. Okay, in the slide 1. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay, but don't turn off the camera. In the second style, we gonna do it with our own style. Okay, I give you a count in 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, once again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much to every participant that already joined in this documentation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Gimana, Pak?
Mbak Karisti, for Dr. Agus Salim, thank you very much, Bu Yusniar, and also the lecturers and participants, especially students. Sorry, I cannot accompany you until finish because I have the next agenda, also the webinar of the student, Publica Health, right? And also continue our lecturing in this morning too. Thank you very much for you all. Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Budiono, already
Assalamualaikum
joined in this.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, next, ladies and gentlemen, let's skip on to the next session, which will be fully guided by the moderator. The moderator on this occasion is a lecturer in the environmental health section of FKM Undip, also serves as head of the environmental health section of FKM Undip. She's an expert in the field of environmental health and analysis environmental health risks too. She is also involved in many activity development science, research, service to community, and publication in the field of environmental health. So please welcome Mrs. Dr. Yusnia Hanani Darundiati, STP MKes. Hello, good morning, Mrs. Yusnia.
Yeah, morning.
How are you today, Mrs.?
Fine, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, because you are fine. Now I'm gonna share the meeting to you. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Karisti. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, in our last week visiting lecture program, we discussed about basic of toxicology and how we use in risk assessment. And today we will discuss more how to apply this toxicology in industrial setting. But before, I would like to introduce you our speaker today, Dr. Agus Salim. I will read his PC. I will share screen first. Okay. Dr. Agus Salim bin Muhammad Banon, he's a public health medicine specialist, also consultant in occupational physician. And he's also registered as with the National Specialist Registry as a public health medicine specialist. He was residing and practicing occupational health in Brunei Shell Petroleum from 2008 to 2021. He was a BSB, subject matter expert in occupational health and also of course industrial health. Prior to 2008, Dr. Agus was working with Petronas Kalgali in Malaysia and then NIOS and Ministry of Health Malaysia from 1994 till 2001. He is also a licensed medical review officer by the American Association of Medical Review Officers and approved diving physician by European Diving Technical Committee. / International Marine Contractor Association, and also South Pacific Underwater Medicine. Within Malaysia, he is a fellowship with Academy of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. He had been involved in national committees with the Department of Occupational Safety and Health, and collaborates with Social Security Organization in developing guidelines and training for medical specialists in the field of medical impairment evaluation for injured workers. In NIOS, he served as advisory board in Journal of Occupational Safety and Health and chair various competence training course committees in NIOS. He had trained hundreds of occupational health doctors and safety and health officers. Okay, Dr. Agus Salim, I will stop there first. Okay, to help our participant to understand clearly about the material today, please feel free to deliver your presentation in Bahasa Melayu or mix English and Melayu. I don't want to talk more. Please share your presentation, deliver your material today. Time and screen is yours.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Alhamdulillah, it's my honor to be here to deliver the topic on the applied toxicology in industrial practices. Well, as requested by Dr. Yus, inshallah, I try my best to use both languages, English and Bahasa Malaysia. And originally, to be frank, actually, I'm from Indonesia as well.
Oh. Where?
Well, di Jogja,
Jogja. Oh, yeah.
di bagian side, my mom Radin daripada Jogja, and my father's side daripada Jawa Tengah.
Oh.
I can understand Jawa language little bit.
Okay. Which part of Jawa Tengah?
Itulah. My father wrote a book on dia punya salah silah hidup dia.
Oh.
Yeah, inshallah one day we'll visit University di Ponegoro as well.
Okay.
And yeah, inshallah. In fact, I have dual training at this moment. I'm conducting a course for doctors in Brunei. Yeah, it's in the postgraduate certificate in OIM. But at this moment, my friend is giving the talk, so I will focus in my lecture to my Indonesia counterpart.
Yeah.
Let me share the slide first. Nampak semua kan? Okay. What I'm going to talk this morning is on the applied toxicology in industrial environment. So ada beberapa isu di sini. Yang pertama adalah applied toxicology. So meaning to say that how we can apply our toxicology knowledge in industrial environment. So most of the time there is a difference between environmental toxicology and occupational toxicology. Environmental toxicology, perhaps you are discussing about the large people that may affected because of the certain exposure, maybe due to problem in ecological system, in a food chain, for example, like Minamata disease in Japan, whereby the river was contaminated by methyl mercury. Similarly, in environmental toxicology, we have kind of like water well, air perigi, or maybe upper source of water, the groundwater, contaminated by arsenic in Bangladesh. It affects a lot of people, but most of the time for environmental toxicology, the dose is slightly rendah ataupun lower compared to those involved in industrial setup. Yeah, and that's number one. But in occupational toxicology, we are talking about workplace, industrial. It can be as a purely industry, example like a petrochemical industry, maybe at the construction site, manufacturing industry, semiconductors, and so on, you know. But at the same time, we also can apply toxicology that we learn in office setup, in office environment. We had a case what we call it as I'm not sure whether you have heard this, but they call it as sick building syndrome, or SBS, which is related to poor indoor air quality, whereby there was an incident happened in US. We call it as Legionella disease because some actually veteran war affected, after attending a certain conference in Philadelphia. That purely because of the poor indoor air quality. I will discuss that later in my last slide, because what I want the students know that the toxicology is not only can be applied in industrial setup, but it also can be applied in office environment as well. Now, toxicology, okay, in a nutshell, secara ringkasnya, dia ada hanya dua asas sahaja yang penting. Two concepts that actually must be embedded in our heart as a student. Dekat mana-mana kita pergi pun, these two concepts jangan lupa, kena ingat, because with these two concepts, then we can apply to other sectors. These two concepts is what? Number one, we call it as a toxicokinetic, or maybe the other one, toxicokinetic and toxicodynamics. That is a fundamental of toxicology, toxicokinetic, the movement of chemical, what we call it as, the absorption, the distribution, the metabolism, and also excretion. There are so many
Excuse
things.
me.
Yes.
Are you still in first slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And number two is in the concept of dose-response relationship. I will explain later, because these two concept adalah konsep yang asas yang kita akan applykan dalam kita punya industrial toxicology. Okay. This is my second slide. Minta maaf, Dr. Yus.
Okay.
At the end of this session, okay, but hopefully, I really hope that our participant will be able, number one, to explain or to apply the concept of toxicokinetic and dose-response relationship in industry setup. Okay, you know the basic fundamental knowledge of toxicokinetic. Betul tak? Tapi how you apply this in the field of occupational, or in the field of OSHA monitoring, control measures and whatnot. That's number one. Number two, the concept of dose-response relationship, how you apply this knowledge in industrial setup. Meaning to say that when you know on the dose-response relationship, then kita tahu bahawa we can classify the toxicity of a certain chemical or certain agent, okay, based on what we call it as lethal dose 50 or LD50. That's number one. And most of the chemical or symbol of toxicity actually is derived from LD50. There is actually one concept applied from the dose-response relationship used not only in environment, in pesticide exposure, but also in a chemical exposure. Number two, the concept that you must understand from dose response relationship is the concept of occupational exposure limit. I believe when you discuss on the fundamental toxicology concept in dose response, you know how OEL, the occupational exposure limit, derived from what we call it as non-observable adverse effect level. Yeah, so from that, actually you can look at your occupational exposure limit and permissible exposure limit. So even for the occupational exposure limit and or permissible exposure limit in a certain countries, they use PEL. They are different type of standards used in industry. If you compare the standard used in industry with environment, there is two different limit. But most of the time, the standard applied in industry is much higher compared to environment. For example, because we are talking about hazard, we're talking about hazard. There's so many hazard, ada chemical hazard, ada physical hazard, you have ergonomic hazard, and so on. Now, take example ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation is not on the problem untuk occupational, yeah, because like our doctors or our X-rays, they use X-rays, they use a CT scan, yeah, they are actually at risk of exposure to ionizing radiation. Mereka terdedah kepada sinaran X-ray kan, tetapi standard kalau di environment atau di public standard untuk environment, untuk ionizing radiation is 1 millisievert. Dia punya unit adalah sievert. And banyak unit untuk sinaran cahaya ni, tetapi untuk efek kepada manusia kita panggil sievert. Ya, dia ada gray, dia ada becquerel, tetapi untuk efek kita panggil sievert. Dan standard untuk environment adalah 1 millisievert. Tetapi untuk occupational, standard adalah 20 millisievert. So meaning to say that somehow the government di mana-mana di seluruh dunia, dia allow workers exposed to higher dose of effect, higher dose of hazard. Bukan saja kepada ionizing radiation, juga kepada noise dan sebagainya. So otherwise, pekerja tak boleh bekerja. Kalau di environment adalah low dose, tetapi di industri adalah the dose is slightly higher. Yeah. Okay. Yang kedua, the aim of presentation ini adalah untuk sebelum, okay, kalau kita di bahagian environment, kadang-kadang kita pergi di sungai kan, yang tidak ada border sebenarnya. Yang kita boleh pergi terus, kita ambil sampel, kita boleh investigate, kita boleh analyse kan, without any any protocol, ya. Tetapi kalau kita nak buat study ataupun kajian di bahagian industri, so kita kena pergi kepada plant ataupun kilang, and kilang adalah enclosed space. Enclosed space meaning you need to get the permission sebelum kita masuk ke kilang. And presentation saya pada pagi ni, saya nak bawa kepada satu suasana yang praktikal. How kita nak approach kilang, okay, macam mana kita nak approach, macam mana kita nak visit kilang dan buat simple kualitatif toxicology assessment di kilang. Tapi sebelum kita masuk kilang, kita kena ada some understanding of basic chemical knowledge. Kita tak nak yang kalau kita pergi tu kita nampak tapi cannot describe ataupun you cannot get info from whatever yang ada di tempat kilang. Dan juga kita kena protect diri kita daripada hazard exposure di kilang. So kita kena berhati-hati sebelum kita masuk kilang. Kita kena identify a few things lah di kilang tersebut supaya kita pun selamat because kilang exposure adalah lebih tinggi daripada di environment. Dan kita biasanya sebelum kita masuk ke kilang, ke industri, ke plant, for example, before you entering the petrochemical plant, they have a kind of like a safety induction. Safety induction, basically to know what kind of activities di tempat kerja, what do's and don'ts. Then you can ask actually. At the end of you punya visit, this is applied toxicology, because this is class of applied toxicology. You need to manage what are the expectation semasa apa yang you nak dapat daripada aktiviti melawat ke kilang from your toxicological assessment. So meaning to say you need to document your finding in a systematic ways. Because at the end of the day, you need to collect the data, but you need to interpret the data. How you collect the data, it must be in a systematic manner. So I will share the hazard inventory and also the risk assessment method at the end of the presentation. Because at the end of the day, kalau misalnya kata di pensyarah minta kita ada macam site visit di kilang dan sebagainya, so student kena come out dengan report, dengan documentation. So report tu kena dipresent kepada pensyarah di dalam bentuk yang systematic. Whatever data that we collect from the kilang tu adalah it should be systematic, and data actually is for action. When we say the surveillance, it's a data for action. Data for the sake of data kita simpan, yes, tidak ada function sangat. Yeah? Okay, let me go to the first one. This is just I got the 2 or 3 slides on the basic toxicology. Basic toxicology before we go to the applied toxicology, as mentioned by the dean just now. When you say toxicology, is you are basically study the effects of chemical. Effect of chemical, either you study to the population, the human being, or you study at the environment setup. Environment impact is a lot actually. It's a lot. It's much bigger compared to occupational. Yeah. So bila kita tahu toxicology, then at the same time, this is the basis untuk kita protect our workers, because then we can actually propose action on the prevention aspect of it. What we call it is control measures, which I believe this has been learned in your in public health punya environment or occupational toxicology control measures, from the elimination, minimization, substitution, and so on. Yeah. Nanti kita ada case studies, insyaAllah. Saya akan bawakan case study macam mana kalau kita lack dalam kita punya knowledge in toxicology, the outcome is fatal. Dia akan membahayakan diri kita. Ya? Sebab kita tak appreciate. Bila kita pergi kilang tu, kita tak nampak apa, kita tak tahu nak apply kita punya knowledge on toxicology. And down toxicokinetic, this is something yang semua orang tahu. Absorption, biasanya kalau di kilang, the main route of exposure is by inhalation. Betul tak? Tetapi most of the time, kadang-kadang because of the poor personal hygiene, tidak menjaga personal hygiene ataupun kebersihan diri. So kadang-kadang exposure terhadap chemical itu berlaku disebabkan oleh kita tak berhati-hati, tak menjaga kebersihan diri kita. Contoh, example in a lead factory, di kilang bateri yang ada plumber, kita bawa makanan di tempat kerja dan kita tak basuh tangan kita dengan betul, kita expose kepada lead ataupun plumber, kita makan dengan tangan kita. Biasanya kalau orang Melayu, orang di Jawa pun biasanya saya di rumah pun makan pakai tangan. Jadi kita tak bersihkan tangan, so makanan yang kita makan tu is contaminated by plumber dan kita akan mendapat kesan-kesan poisoning daripada plumber. Very interesting yang tentang plumber ni, sebab di zaman dahulu knowledge toksikologi ni tidak berkembang. Oleh itu, bila mana pekerja datang berjumpa doktor, mereka datang dengan simptom sakit perut. Sakit perut yang sangat-sangat sakit perut, we call it abdominal pain or colic abdominal pain. Dan doktor masa tu knowledge terhadap toksikologi tak ada. They just examine the patient or the worker and they said that this is because of appendicitis. Then they open the abdomen and turn out it's not appendicitis. It is that actually a manifestation daripada lead poisoning, abdominal pain. Ini zaman dulu ni. Kan, zaman sekarang pun kalau doktor tu tak familiar tentang pekerjaan workers dan dia tak ambil occupational history yang betul, maka dia akan ada salah diagnosis. Itu sebab pada kilang yang safety-nya bagus, example like a petrochemical industry or maybe some company like lead factory. So whatever coverall, baju-baju yang diorang pakai tu, okay, mereka hendaklah tinggalkan di tempat kerja. Mereka tak boleh bawa balik. Sebab the coverall yang baju yang diorang pakai di tempat kerja itu, I'm talking about macam kilang lead, kilang asbestos kan, because all the baju itu is contaminated by asbestos, by lead. So diorang kena tinggalkan di tempat kerja, mereka kena shower, mandi di tempat kerja, tukar kepada baju mereka untuk balik ke rumah. Kenapa? Because the cloth is contaminated by the certain chemical. There was an incident in Japan. Okay, there was a guy being diagnosed having a certain lung disease or lung condition. They call it mesothelioma. So mesothelioma, the main cause of mesothelioma is from asbestos. When they investigate, mereka menyiasat kenapa boleh dapat mesothelioma, sebab pekerja ini sebenarnya tidak pun terdedah kepada asbestos. Tetapi dulu-dulu di Jepun, ayah mereka yang bekerja di shipyard industry, di kapal, di bahagian kapal dia banyak guna asbestos. So masa tu safety measures tak banyak. So dia bawa balik baju coverall tu di rumah dan baju itu dibasuh oleh anaknya dan isteri dan automatically apa yang ada di kilang tu dibawa di rumah. Jadi mereka pun sama-sama terdedah kepada asbestos. And as you know, the latency time, masa nak develop, latency time meaning masa nak develop daripada exposure, first exposure tu kepada dia punya simptom is about 20 to 30 years for mesothelioma ataupun lung cancer ataupun kanser yang melibatkan lapisan paru-paru adalah 30 years. So sebenarnya kanser yang dia dapat itu adalah berpunca daripada ayah dia yang dulu-dulu bawa coverall baju dia tu balik ke rumah. So dalam toksikologi kita belajar macam simple saja, absorption dengan inhalation, by skin exposure, dermal contact, by ingestion kan. Tetapi how to apply? Jadi sebagai student of public health, kalau kita ada peluang pergi di kilang dan sebagainya, so kita boleh gunakan knowledge ini untuk educate pekerja-pekerja di industri supaya mereka ini tidak terdedah kepada bahan kimia dengan dengan mengamalkan good personal hygiene, ya. And also tidak merokok. Kadang-kadang ramai, I think ASEAN, not only Malaysia, I think di Indonesia pun ramai yang masih menghisap rokok. Mereka menghisap rokok di tempat kerja dan automatically rokok itu bahaya, betul. Tetapi tangan mereka is contaminated with other things, with silica ke apa ke. So mereka dapat dua-dua. So again, this is kalau based on oral ingestion ni, toksikologi, oral ingestion, tetapi lebih kepada poor personal hygiene. Ya. That is under absorption. Ya. Under distribution, this is very important, for us macam medical doctors, how we can apply knowledge of toxicology dalam bentuk distribution ni dalam praktis kita setiap hari. Yang pertama, kita kena tahu the target organ of the chemical. For example, like talking about macam organic solvent. Organic solvent biasanya two major organ affected. One is nervous system and number two skin, because dia ni ada lipophilic. So it tend to has high affinity ataupun dia suka kepada skin dengan nervous system ni, jadi ataupun the fat tissue. Jadi kebanyakan kesan daripada organic solvent poisoning tu dia akan affect the brain and affect the skin as well. Jadi itu dua benda yang penting. Dan ini sebenarnya berlaku kepada semua chemical. So kalau kita nak pergi kilang, the first thing that we need to understand in our mind, we need to understand the toxicokinetic of chemical, toxicokinetic of silica, toxicokinetic of organophosphate, toxicokinetic of heavy metal, lead, arsenic, mercury, chromium, cadmium, nickel, so many things. So this should be ada dalam kita punya head sebelum kita visit factory, and by knowing the toxicokinetic ini, dia sangat-sangat membantu kita sebenarnya. Ya, sama juga kalau kita tahu distribution ya pada certain tempat, example like asbestos or maybe silica, basically is the chemical ataupun asbestos, the fiber, silica tu dia expose, the main target organ is lung, the respiratory system. Tetapi the very interesting, the silica dan juga asbestos, dia boleh tembus kita punya lung dan dia pergi pada other organ. Dia boleh pergi pada kidney, dia boleh pergi pada reproductive system. So this is how you apply the things, and you don't, and sometimes, and because of this effect, you can see a lot of macam abnormality dekat dia punya system function. Abnormal in liver function, abnormal metabolism. Metabolism ni penting sebab kita nak tahu juga macam mana kita nak access toxicity yang telah berlaku. How we can identify that actually the person is having effect from exposure to certain chemicals. Yeah. For example, let's say a person a worker is exposed to cadmium. Okay, so what kind of test that you need to do? For a person exposed to, for example, like organic solvent, toluene. So what kind of the sample that you need to take? Example, kalau toluene biasa kita ambil urine hypochlorite acid, for example. Or maybe kalau dia exposed to cadmium, we can do the biological effect monitoring. Dia tengok beta tu microglobin, contohnya lah. And similarly to other chemical, kalau misal kata exposed to organophosphate, then because we know that some of the enzyme is affected, then we can measure the acetylcholinesterase. So the metabolism knowledge ni is very important for us sebab kita tahu what kind of monitoring or so-called biomarker exposure assessment. In English term, kita panggil biomarker exposure assessment yang kita boleh detect kan. Yang ini I'm not sure whether this is applied in environmental toxicology. I think it's pretty much similar. So kalau kita nak tahu population affected, so kita akan tengok contoh kalau fogging activities. Fogging activities ni, fogging dalam bahasa Melayu tu, contoh kalau kita ada kes denggi di sesuatu kawasan dan kita akan buat fogging kan. Kita akan pergi fogging tu. So fogging tu dia pakai apa sebenarnya? Ubat fogging tu biasa dia pakai organophosphate. Kalau di Malaysia dulu-dulu dia panggil malathion. Malathion ni kan apa tu adalah chemical pesticide. Walaupun dari segi dia punya classification of toxicity is not much, tetapi dia akan affect juga workers ataupun foggers yang buat fogging activity tu. So those yang buat fogging activity tu, kalau di tempat kami, diorang kena buat cholinesterase assessment. This is the applied toxicology. Applied toxicology. Basically, it's not only ke industri, tetapi di Jabatan Kesihatan juga kita kena pakai benda ni sebab mereka terlibat dalam fogging activity. Similarly, dalam excretion ini, kalau di bidang applied toxicology, then we need to know when actually the sample can be taken. Adakah sampel tu kena ambil pre-shift ataupun at the end of the shift. Kan? Because half-life of chemical berbeza-beza. Kalau misal kata half-life ni maksudnya, I think semua dah tahu kan maksud half-life. Half-life is actually the time taken. Doktor tolong kalau saya ada yang saya silap, doktor tolong terjemahkan ya. Basically is actually the time taken untuk sesuatu chemical tu menjadi separuh. Kan? For example kalau lead, tengoklah dekat mana lead di dalam darah, mungkin sekejap dalam 28 days or 36 days. Tetapi kalau di bone, it can up to maybe 10 years, 10 to 15 years. So maksudnya applied toxicology tu we know is not only knowing that actually the half-life of lead in the bone is 10 years, tetapi you need to know that actually bahawa in a certain condition kalau ada physiological abnormality during pregnancy atau masa mengandung, lead daripada bone tu akan pergi kepada blood system. Jadi orang yang pekerja perempuan yang mengandung ataupun yang breastfeeding, yang menyusukan anak dia, kalau dia bekerja dengan lead, maka dia ketika dia pregnant, ketika dia mengandung dan menyusukan anak, dia tak boleh bekerja dekat lab. Sebab ketika ini, actually dia akan affect the baby kan. Jadi walaupun pertama dia expose kepada exogenous lead kat luar. Yang kedua, dalam badan dia dah ada lead dah. So physiologically dia tak stable, dia boleh move to the other compartment. So dia akan terdedah kepada lead poisoning, bukan sahaja pada dia dan juga tetapi kepada anaknya juga. That's why mereka ini kalau di Malaysia dalam undang-undang government, kita panggil istilah ni adalah medical removal protection. Medical removal protection. Bukan saja yang kalau misalnya kata dia ada definite macam poisoning case, memang kita kena remove lah. Atau kalau exposure is beyond the permissible exposure limit, kena remove. Tetapi pekerja-pekerja wanita yang mengandung dan juga yang breastfeeding juga adalah akan di-remove temporarily daripada further exposure to lead. So these are the how we apply the concept of toxicokinetic. Yeah. Let me know kalau ada apa-apa soalan, because make it informal session dan kita akan cuba jawab ya, dekat mana yang saya boleh. I move to the next one. This is a concept of dose response relationship. I only have 2 or 3 slides saja untuk fundamental toxicology because I believe slide ni sangat-sangat penting. Yang kedua adalah the knowledge of dose response relationship ni banyak yang kita boleh applykan di dalam industri. Yang pertama, kita ada istilah kat sini, kalau kita buat toxicological study, dia ada 3 respon. Dia ada ED, TD dan juga LD. LD respon. L tu stand for lethal dose. Dos yang menyebabkan kematian. Kalau TD, dos yang menyebabkan toxic effect. Kalau ED, effective dose, dos yang menyebabkan kesan yang kita nak, kesan tak ada apa. So, kalau the gap between the ED and LD itu besar, LD or ED, TD or ED, LD, kalau ratio dia besar sangat, ini kita panggil pakai safety margin. So, chemical tu okay lah. So, basically, dia punya differentiation between the toxic level and effective level tu jauh sangat. So, maksudnya, indirectly, chemical tu considered less toxic lah. Tapi kalau safety margin adalah rendah, maka chemical ni memang kena sangat berhati-hati. Biasanya di industri digunakan nilai LD50 untuk classify toxicity. Dan kajian LD50 ni biasanya digunakan untuk animal, dibuat di kajian untuk tikus lah. So kita sebagai yang nak pergi ke kilang ni, sebelum masuk kilang, first kita kena tahu apa chemical dia. Kan? Yang kedua, kita tahu dia punya toxicity level. Considered high toxicity ataupun low toxicity. Macam ni kita nak tahu. Saya akan tunjukkan cara kita nak tahu. Kemudian, biasanya kita boleh tahu, bila kita biasa setiap chemical, dia ada kita panggil sebagai safety data sheet. Kat Malaysia dulu dia panggil chemical safety data sheet. Di Europe, di US, UK dia panggil MSDS. Material Safety Data Sheet. Di Indonesia panggil apa, Bu?
Mungkin ada yang tahu.
Dia setiap chemical tu dia kena ada satu properties dalam dia punya, macam ubat juga macam tu juga. Ubat kita ada. Jadi dia ada 16 elemen di situ. 16 elemen yang kena tahu, dan salah satu adalah dia punya LD50 level lah. LD50 level. Nanti saya ada satu slide tentang apa yang kita kena tahu. Sebab first and foremost dalam prinsip kita sebagai post practitioner, sebagai lecturer, sebagai students, first and foremost memang kita nak investigate case, betul. Kita pergi di the field, we go to the plant to do the investigation, but at the same time you need to look after yourself. Kena jaga diri sendiri dulu, kena pastikan keselamatan kita dulu pastikan keselamatan kita dulu. Jadi untuk tahu macam mana nak menjaga keselamatan from the chemical perspective, you must know how to read the chemical toxicity level. You must know to identify kawasan chemical yang berbahaya. Jangan main terus pergi saja. Ada warning sign dia yang kita.
In Indonesia, lembar data keselamatan bahan.
Kita kena tengok. Yang ketiga, kita pakai. Kita kena tahu cara untuk control measures, PPE, personal protective equipment yang kita pakai. That's number one on the issues of toxicity. Yang kedua, standard tu adalah di industri. Saya rasa the same concept juga di environmental toxicology. Macam mana standard tu derive actually daripada animal study, and dia ambil dose daripada ED50 or effective dose 50. The dose, not ED50 per se, but the dose lower than ED50, that they call it as loyal or NOIL. No observed effect level. No observed effect level. Ataupun a low observable adverse effect level. Daripada situ baru dia akan convertkan kepada standard. Okay. Jadi yang ini penting. Kalau di bahagian environment untuk toxicology, standard ni mungkin ada satu saja. Ada satu jenis standard. Dan standard ni normally the level is much lower daripada tempat kerja. Tetapi kalau di industri, standard tu biasanya minimum ada 3 ya. Semua ada 3. Satu, standard yang untuk 8 hours exposure. Dipanggil time weighted average 8 hours exposure. Because normally government ataupun dalam undang-undang, pekerja hanya dibenarkan bekerja selama 8 jam. Kemudian standard itu 8 jam tu untuk 5 hari. So that standard is meant for 8 jam exposure ataupun 40 hour per week exposure ataupun 52 weeks per year exposure ataupun 40 years untuk the whole life. Because normally kita kerja untuk mula kerja umur 20 dan kita akan pencen ataupun berhenti kerja pada umur 60 tahun. Jadi exposure tu adalah untuk sehingga 40 tahun. Itu yang pertama. Maksudnya standard bekerja untuk average 8 jam sehari. Okey. Yang kedua, standard tu hanya dibenarkan kita expose untuk selama 15 minit. What we call it, biasa kita panggil short term exposure limit. Maksudnya, this is the limit yang dibenarkan untuk 15 minit exposure sahaja. Maksudnya, kalau contoh I bagi, for example yang paling senang untuk macam noise ataupun bunyi bising kan. Bunyi bising biasanya kalau public dalam, kalau tak salah saya dalam 75-65 kan doktor. Dan macam tu. Tetapi kalau di tempat kerja dahulunya 90 desibel. Tetapi sekarang Malaysia telah mengurangkan untuk 8 jam exposure adalah 85 desibel. That is for 8 hours. Tetapi kalau untuk 15 minit exposure, bunyi bising yang dibenarkan adalah sebanyak 115 desibel. Tetapi kalau untuk ceiling limit paling tinggi, one off, tak boleh exceed daripada ni adalah 140 desibel. So meaning to say that untuk tempat kerja dia ada 3 jenis standard. Untuk 8 jam, untuk 15 minit dan juga ada ceiling limit. Ini agak berbeza daripada environment. Environment mungkin ada satu sahaja. Okay. So that is how we apply the concept of those response ni dalam bentuk standard. Dan yang ketiga yang kita kena tahu tuan-tuan dan puan sekalian adalah standard ni is not applicable. The occupational exposure standard is not applicable untuk 2 keadaan. Satu, untuk mereka yang sensitif. Contoh orang yang ada asma, is not applicable. The standard is not applicable. Contoh exposure to hexane methazoline diisocyanate, HMDI. Ini memang ataupun TDI, toluene diisocyanate. Ini boleh actually is precursor ataupun provoker untuk asma kan. Dia ada standard level. Tetapi untuk orang yang asma, standard ini is not applicable because kalau ada asma, even just without very small dose exposure, memang dah dapat asma. Ataupun kalau dia ada skin condition yang allergy, contact dermatitis, just saja exposure, dia punya akan ada skin condition. So standard is not applicable untuk mereka yang sensitif. Yang kedua, standard juga is not applicable untuk mereka, untuk agent-agent yang menyebabkan kanser. Yang menyebabkan kanser ataupun dalam istilah Melayunya barah, tapi kalau Indonesia kalau tak salah dia panggil kanker ke apa, kanser juga rasanya, ya. Jadi
Karsinogenik, ya, kanker.
kisah kanker kan, ya, actually it's not applicable. So kanser ni juga dia ada dia punya classification, tapi kita tak bincang kat sini. So because today saya nak fokuskan kepada practical applied toxicology in industry. Kita tak akan pergi kepada macam lab ke ataupun theory part. We just go for the practical aspect only. Next one. Ini saya dah explain tadi. Normally the classification is based on the LD50. So look at the symbol. Kalau benda tu extremely hazardous, dia ada gambar macam tu. Contoh kalau kat sini, okay. Now, first and foremost, we need to understand ada banyak hazard. Okay. Kalau dalam environmental toxicology, normally kita kaitkan dengan chemical pun ada toxicology punya involvement dalam tu. Physical ada toxicology involvement. Biological mungkin ada juga. Tapi mungkin ergonomics tidaklah, mungkin is not applicable dalam toxicology. Mechanical pun mungkin tidak apply dalam toxicology, and psychological pun tidak apply dalam toxicology. Jadi kalau dalam applied toxicology kita cuma fokus on 3 aspek, on physical hazard, chemical hazard and biological hazard. Yeah. Okay. Now, saya personally saya suka sangat yang ni graf, yang chart ni, sebab dia bagi the ideas of how kita apply toxicology di industri. Okay. Yang pertama, workers dia akan expose kepada hazard, betul kan? So jadi sebagai practitioner dalam bidang toksikologi itu, so kita punya concern yang pertama adalah kita kena buat exposure assessment. And there are 3 type ataupun 2 jenis exposure assessment. Yang pertama, kita boleh buat qualitative exposure assessment just by asking history kan. Kita boleh tanya dia macam mana, we can see, so things that without using equipment. Yang kedua, kita namakan sebagai quantitative exposure assessment. And there are 2 types, ada 2 jenis quantitative exposure assessment. Yang pertama, kita measuring the external dose. Berapa banyak dose yang expose. Berapa banyak dose yang expose. Of course, kita boleh pecahkan lagi kepada air monitoring. Kita letakkan satu equipment kat station. Normally environmental toxicology kita guna yang ini. Environmental air monitoring. Yang kedua, kita boleh buat personal monitoring. Personal monitoring ni kita letakkan equipment dekat dengan dia punya breathing zone untuk 8 jam ataupun beberapa jam, dan kita ambil average kemudian yang kita namakan time weighted average. That actually give us some clue how much is the exposure quantitatively. Di personal exposure monitoring itu is sangat penting sebab workers ni dia sebenarnya bukannya duduk dalam satu station. It is dynamic. Dia berjalan daripada satu tempat ke satu tempat. So, bila kita pasang equipment dekat dengan breathing zone tu, dekat dengan ni, jadi dia kat mana kita dapat tahu berapa banyak dia expose. Because kadang-kadang dia pergi tempat yang exposure tinggi, kadang-kadang dia pergi tempat yang exposure rendah. Jadi kita tahu, kita boleh buat untuk noise juga sebenarnya. Dan yang kedua, kita boleh measure internal dose yang kita namakan sebagai biological monitoring, ataupun yang kedua kita buat measure biological effect monitoring. So see, this is a very important slide sebab menggunakan konsep toxicology kita boleh measure exposure assessment sama ada di luar ataupun di dalam badan kita sendiri. Kalau di luar kita namakan sebagai exposure ambient monitoring, sama ada kita measure environmental atau air monitoring ataupun personal monitoring. Kalau di dalam badan kita measure biology, kita gunakan konsep biological monitoring ataupun biological effect monitoring. Dalam biological monitoring biasanya kita measure either the parent compound ataupun dia punya metabolite. Maksudnya because setengah-setengah chemical memang parent compound lah, macam lead. Lead dia tak metabolize pada anak-anak dia, tak ada. Tapi kalau solvent biasanya dia akan metabolize kepada other chemicals. Contoh macam toluene. Toluene kalau low dose exposure kita measure oclisol contohnya lah. That is biological monitoring. Similarly, biological effect monitoring is you are measuring the enzyme subclinical level, enzyme affected by the exposure to certain chemical. Paling clear example like organophosphate, kita measure sama ada plasma cholinesterase ataupun red blood cell cholinesterase. This is how we apply the concept of toxicology in industry on exposure assessment. At what level we use kita gunakan ni, kita guna konsep of toxicokinetic. Konsep of toxicokinetic. Dan di Malaysia memang diwajibkan dalam undang-undang kalau seseorang terdedah kepada certain chemical 50% from the standard. Maksudnya action level 50%. Kalau standard on certain chemical katakan 5 microgram per meter cube contohnya, kalau dia expose lebih daripada 2.5, so kena buat medical examination ataupun medical investigation. Yang tu kita guna konsep apa untuk medical investigation tu? Kita guna konsep toxicodynamic. So kita tahu kat mana target organ. So we need to examine the worker lah clinically dan juga kena buat some investigation juga. Yeah. Now, a link between work and health is a very important. Bila mana kita di luar kilang, okay, kita dengan kita punya dengan keadaan kita punya kesihatan kan. Tetapi bila kita masuk kilang, disebabkan oleh kilang ni atau factory, dia ada banyak hazards, so dia akan affect kita punya kesihatan. Semua akan terlibat, sama ada nervous system kita, kadang-kadang dia boleh menyebabkan dementia, kadang-kadang dia menyebabkan kita punya sensory kita tak terasa, kita tak boleh bau, dia affect the olfactory nerve, dia akan affect kita punya lung function, kita susah nak bernafas, okay? Apalagi dia akan affect kita punya kidney, buah pinggang kita rosak, dia affect kita punya liver, some can cause cancer, ya, kita ada skin cancer, kita ada macam-macam cancer. So meaning to say, hazard di tempat kerja akan menyebabkan kesihatan kita terjejas. So it's very important to identify hazard lah. Tetapi ada yang satu lagi adalah kalau kita punya kesihatan kita tak bagus kan, memang kita masuk tu, kita punya kesihatan memang tak bagus sebenarnya. Kita akan menyebabkan kerja tu terjejas ataupun orang lain akan affected because of kita. Sebab memang kita memang tak sihat from the beginning. For example, kalau kita dah ada certain medical condition, for example asthma, ataupun dalam bahasa Melayunya panggil lelah. I think di Indonesia pun sama juga panggil lelah ataupun asma. So, kita bekerja di certain chemical kan, sebenarnya kita tak fit, we are not fit to work kan. Jadi bila kita dapat asma, so kita sebenarnya expose kepada chemical ni, So kita akan menjejaskan keselamatan untuk diri kita dan juga kita akan menjejaskan keselamatan untuk orang lain juga. So kena pastikan mereka yang nak pergi kilang kena sihat dahululah. Nak silat kena sihat dahulu. Ataupun kalau contoh yang lagi mudah adalah kalau kita nak jadi tanker driver. Tanker driver yang bawa petrol. Dia satu kerja yang bahaya. Jadi kalau kita ni tak sihat, contoh kita ada diabetes not well control, kita guna insulin, insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Jadi insulin kita punya gula tak terkawal, tinggi sangat. Semasa kita membawa tanker, so kita boleh terdedah kepada insiden. Bila ada insiden, lakunya accident, dan kita bawa tu adalah petrol. So it will be disaster. The consequent outcome ataupun outcome of disaster because tanker, okay, dia accident, terbalik, berlanggar, so banyak petrol ni. Yang benda ni berlaku kat Malaysia. Ada seorang pekerja dia ada sakit jantung. Dibenarkan untuk bawa tanker. Kemudian disebabkan oleh dia sakit jantung masa bawa tanker tu meletup. That's why kesihatan tu penting. Pastikan sebelum kita masuk ke kilang ataupun di industri, kesihatan kita ni dalam keadaan yang optimum. Okay, this is more on the risk assessment. Again, if you look at the risk assessment involves two things. One is the hazard identification, and number two on the exposure assessment. And hazard identification, we are using two methods. Either we are using the toxicological kind of assessment, and number two, it is based on the epidemiological and clinical assessment. And after that, we need to assess the exposure, either using the qualitative or quantitative method. At the same time, look at how good is the control measures, and then we can identify, we can rank the risk, whether low risk, high risk, or moderate risk, depending on the likelihood of exposure and the severity of effects. Yeah. Now, sekarang ni saya nak gunakan konsep risk assessment ni bila kita masuk ke kilang ataupun kita masuk di factory. Yeah. So this is the basis. Yeah. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, sebelum kita masuk ataupun student pergi di kilang, kalau kita ada attachment kan, make sure that actually at least we have some basic foundation. Basic foundation in toxicology. Jadi dia akan banyak membantu kita bila kita masuk ke kilang. First one, so we know that dalam toxicokinetic tu, kita ada banyak route of exposure, either by inhalation, by ingestion, by skin contact. But if you take alone macam inhalation juga, kita kena pastikan on if the thing is just a physical matter, then we need to know whether dia punya particle tu is considered as respirable particle or inhalable particle. We call it PM10, PM10, PM50. I'm sure you are familiar with this word. Kalau PM5 is particulate matter with the size of 5 micron, that is considered as respirable particle. Kalau PM20 tu is a particle with the 20 micron, yang tu inhalable particle. The difference between inhalable particle with respirable particle, satu dia terus pergi pada alveolar, pada kita punya lung alveolar lah. Istilah Melayu pun kita panggil pada alveolar. Tapi kalau inhalable particle, so dia hanya pergi kat bahagian mungkin sampai kat faring saja, sampai kat trachea. Dia tak pergi, for example, kalau dalam silica standard, dia ada standard untuk inhalable dan juga respirable silica, dia lain. Ya. Dan yang kedua kena tengok kalau dalam exposure to based on inhalation, kena tengok juga sama dia dalam bentuk vapor ke, bentuk fume ke, kan, dan sebagainya. Yang kedua, do preliminary assessment sebelum masuk kilang. Look at the bigger picture first. Sama ada kilang ni kilang apa sebenarnya. Jadi, contoh macam kalau saya datang adalah dalam oil and gas industry, kan. So dalam chemical plant bukan semacam LNG, liquid natural gas, ataupun chemical plant lah, whatever. So what kind of chemical yang ada di situ? Contoh benzene, hexene. Okay, that is under organic solvent. Mercury, methanol, hydrogen sulfide, carbon tetrachloride, carbon monoxide, VCM, or vinyl chloride monomer. So kita kena ada macam hazard inventory checklist dulu, get some ideas dahulu sebelum kita masuk ke kilang tersebut. So bila kita tahu ni, kita boleh classify. Contoh benzene is considered macam mana? It's a carcinogenic, kan? It's carcinogenic. It can cause some red blood cell disorders, leukemia dan sebagainya, kan? Same goes to macam mercury. Tengok juga mercury sama ada dalam bentuk, most of the time kalau in the industry, mercury ni adalah dalam bentuk inorganic mercury. Tetapi kalau environment, because bila inorganic mercury itu bila sampai kepada biological media ataupun sampai kepada environment, dalam sungai ke fresh water dan sebagainya, and because of the being taken by fish, whatever, some mechanism, some biotransformation berlaku. Dia bertukar kepada methyl mercury. Inorganic mercury bertukar jadi methyl mercury. Methyl mercury is something yang very significant. It's actually the more poisonous compared to inorganic mercury. The clear example is Minamata disease di Jepun. I'm sure mungkin boleh Google di YouTube on Minamata disease. Minamata disease. It's not only affect macam manusia, even animal, the cat, and in fact berlaku kat fetus juga, di janin daripada ibu kepada baby yang di dalam kandungan pun berlaku juga. It affect two things normally. One, it affect the cerebellar function, part of kita punya brain tu. So biasanya yang terkena dengan methyl mercury tu, dia akan affect dia punya balance. Kita biasanya dalam medical kita panggil ataxia. Dia punya balance dia affected, tangan dia macam tremor dan sebagainya. So, visual pun dia akan affected juga. Dia ada visual field dia constricted. Dia sangat kecil, dia tak boleh nampak horizon tetapi nampak macam tunnel vision. So that is because of methyl mercury. Information terhadap chemical ni sangat penting sebelum kita pergi kepada industri. Kalau kita tak ada ni, at least kita dapat some ideas. I'm going to a manufacturing industry. Mungkin saya nak masuk kepada untuk macam semiconductor atau those dealing with the heavy metal. So kena pastikan ada checklist at personal level lah. Dia tak macam environmental toxicology. Macam environmental toxicology lagi susah sebab kalau kita nak pergi buat investigation, sometimes kita tak tahu apa parameter dalam sungai itu, kan. Kita tak tahu, kita nak analyse apa. Jadi kita analyse untuk semua sekali, kita tak pasti. Even dalam macam water drinking standard, kan. Contoh water drinking standard, dia dah ada dah. Jadi tengok pH, tengok residual chlorine, tengok BOD, COD and so on lah. Tapi kalau untuk heavy metal, kita tak tahu. Tapi kalau di kilang, because kita boleh tahu apa chemical yang diorang expose sebab setiap kilang, dia kena ada hazard inventory. Dia ada list of chemical that being used in industry. Yang tu kita kena tanya dulu. Jadi kita boleh identify straight away, okay, yang ni adalah chemical yang digunakan di industri. Sangat penting untuk kita lah sebelum kita buat assessment. First step is to identify the hazard dahulu, kan. Hazard ni kalau petrochemical memang benda tu dah ada dalam dia punya checklist. Cuma kita kena tanya sahaja. Ya. Okey. Kemudian macam mana kita nak dapat dia punya all the information tu? Yang ni yang penting lah. So we need to discuss dengan safety officer. Kalau di Malaysia, kita ada undang-undang yang dipanggil sebagai Use and Standard of Exposure Chemical Risk to Health. Maksudnya, those chemical yang considered berbahaya, dia kena ada hazard inventory. Kita juga ada undang-undang di dalam Malaysia law, chemical yang dianggap berbahaya itu dia kena buat risk assessment, dipanggil CHRA. Kita juga ada undang-undang kalau risikonya bahaya, mereka yang terdedah kepada chemical yang berbahaya, proper medical examination is needed. This actually is embedded in our law. Cuma dari segi implementation mungkin kena dipertingkatkan sebab undang-undang ada tapi penguatkuasaan tu kena dipertingkatkan. Yeah? I'm not sure in Indonesia lah, I would say maybe similar. I'm now in Brunei conducting courses for doctors. They have their macam regulatory agency. Kalau di Malaysia dia panggil DOSH, Department of Safety and Health. Di Brunei dipanggil SHINA, Safety, Health, Environment, National Authority. Tapi dia ada undang-undang ada juga, tetapi most basic law lah, basic law. Dia considered macam banyak yang boleh dipertingkatkan lagi kalau nak compare dengan negara-negara maju lah. Yeah? I'm not sure about Indonesia. I believe mungkin kita ada similar undang-undang untuk workers, untuk industri. Yeah? So next slide. Okey, yang ni memang kena hafal lah untuk student lah. So kita kena identify hazard dulu. Okey, sama ada toxic ke, sangat toxic ke, corrosive, harmful, irritant, flammable, oxidizing. So each student yang pergi kepada art attachment pada kilang ataupun industri or plant whatever, they must know the symbol. So when they know the symbol, they can assess. They can protect themselves first. Yeah. Okay. Now this is the one that I mentioned on the safety data sheet. In Malaysia, they call it chemical safety data sheet lah. So dia ada, ingat kalau macam di kilang lah, tadi kalau kita ada list of chemicals dalam chemical industries tu, so dia orang ada phenol, they got methanol, they got macam hydrocarbon, they got solvent. So each chemical tu dia ada safety data sheet. So safety data sheet tu, these are the 16 item dalam safety data sheet. So kita dalam toxicology kita concern, kalau dalam occupational toxicology kita concern on number 11, toxicological information. So dia ada concern juga untuk environmental toxicology, kita ada ecological information, kita ada disposal information. When I was in Shell, dalam safety department kita, saya on medical, tetapi dalam safety department kita ada orang yang actually person in charge untuk macam satu environment tu okey, tetapi ada sub environment ni. Kita ada orang yang adalah marine safety. Something yang kalau kita ada activities untuk buat platform dan sebagainya, we need to ensure that the marine so is not affected. Because for us, there are 4 things involved in our activities yang kita tak boleh accept. Number 1, kalau the activities affect the people. So that's why no. We need to minimize the risk as low as reasonably practicable. Number 2, if the activity affect the environment. Dalam oil and gas macam drilling, they do the seismic study, diorang ada nak bina platform, so dia laut is apa yang diorang buat lah. Kemudian Yang ketiga, kalau ada efek kepada aset. Yang keempat, kalau aktiviti tu affect kita punya reputation. So we as best as we could in oil and gas industry, regardless of the name lah. Kalau di Indonesia kita ada Pertanima, ada kan? Kalau di Malaysia kita ada Petronas, kemudian kita ada Exxon Mobil, kita ada Shell. So whatever activities yang kita buat, we need to ensure that the risk is very minimum lah, as low as reasonably practicable. This is the concept by oil and gas industry. Okay, so back to our lecture, we need to ensure kalau kita pergi ke kilang, first kita nak dapatkan hazard inventory. Yang kedua, pastikan kita ada safety data sheet. So kita kena applykan kita punya toxicology itu dalam elemen number 11, toxicological information. Termasuk juga nombor 9, nombor 4 is hazard identification. So all this actually is related to, somehow is related to toxicology. Okay, contohnya kalau involved in the hazard is methyl benzene. So what are the risks? Basically dia sangat mudah terbakar. Okay, mungkin actually affect the skin. Dia akan affect the lung system melalui inhalation. Dia highly flammable. Okay, kemudian dia punya safety tu, keep away from sources of ignition, no smoking di tempat yang ada benzin. Itu sebab kalau tuan-tuan pergi di kilang oil and gas, kalau pelan dia besar, dia punya pelan kilang tu besar sangat. So, kalau biasanya kalau pekerja tu sama ada dia berjalan kaki ataupun dia orang naik basikal sebenarnya dalam kilang tu, dalam pelan tu. Tapi kadang-kadang some activities dia kena naik kereta lah, jauh sangat. So dekat kereta tu dia ada panggil spark arrestor. Spark arrestor tu maksudnya dia macam tadi kata keep away from sources of ignition. So maksudnya dia mengelakkan fire, mengelakkan terbakar. So dekat dia punya exhaust tu dia letakkan spark arrestor. So kalau kita nak masuk kereta atau kenderaan di dalam chemical plant, so we need to comply with their regulation by putting the spark arrestor. Okay. Now we go to the practical side. Okay, on industry visit. At this junction, is there any questions? It's already reaching 11:35. Okay, but let me, if not, then I will continue.
Yeah, there are 2 questions from the audience.
Okay, the audience. Okay, let me. Okay.
I will read you the
Please.
question. Oke, pada ruang radioterapi di rumah sakit tertentu, bagian atas ruangan tidak ada plat baja sebagai barrier. Sementara di lantai atas masih digunakan buat rawat inap pasien. Apakah kondisi tersebut memenuhi safety standard? Bagaimana efek paparan terhadap pasien rawat inap di atasnya?
Okey, betul. Okey, sebenarnya kalau dia ada di Malaysia dia ada akta, and basically kalau untuk yang berkaitan dengan ionizing radiation, so dia ada under nuclear technology punya bahagian lah, and dia ada macam radiation act on that. Okey, dan sebelum kita boleh buat ataupun install any equipment with regard to ionizing radiation tu, dia ada some preparation. So the first and foremost, dia ada specification yang dia kena buat. Most of the time they will put macam lead, basically untuk pelindungan ionizing radiation tu, basically di sekeliling dia punya dia punya dinding, ceiling, whatever tu dia kena ada lead lah. Yang kedua, okay, dia kena ada satu dipanggil RPO ataupun Radiation Protection Officer. Radiation Protection Officer is to ensure the safety of the equipment. I'm not sure di Indonesia ada ke tidak, tetapi kalau di Malaysia setiap yang menggunakan tu dia kena ada RPO, Radiation Protection Officer. Kalau benda tu tak ada, so dia tak akan tidak ada license untuk beroperasi lah. That in Malaysia. Yeah, because normally the act actually based on 3 aspects. Number one, I normally call it as STD lah, sexual transmitted disease. It's not sexual transmitted disease, but the acronym S, T, and D. The S is shield. Shield maksudnya pelindung. Pelindung dia kena ada LED. Pelindung kat dinding ada LED, tetapi yang buat tu pula, yang untuk radio operator yang buat tu, dia kena pakai apron, LED apron. And actually, the ionizing radiation is very much depend on the tissues lah. Some tissue are resistant, some tissue are sensitive. Some tissue are very, very sensitive, especially on the reproductive tissue. And back to the concept of dose-response relationship, kita ada 2 lagi konsep sebenarnya, kita panggil stochastic effect and deterministic effect. So stochastic effect tu actually is not dose dependent. The effect of cancer is not dose dependent, but the more you expose, you tend to get the cancer much more cepat lah, dengan lebih cepat. Tetapi deterministic effect untuk apa ni adalah dia dose dependent. Contoh kalau on ionizing radiation, so the most sensitive organ is reproductive tissue. That's why kalau saya ingat masa saya di hospital bekerja sebagai doktor dulu-dulu, kalau ada shooting, maksudnya patient yang memerlukan X-ray, kadang-kadang dia tak boleh berjalan. So X-ray machine kena bawa dekat atas katil. So the radio operator kata shooting semua berlari belakang dinding ataupun cover dia punya genitalia part lah. During that time, that was in 1994, lama sudah. So that is the concept of shield lah. Yang kedua adalah the time of exposure. Berapa lama dia expose terhadap ionizing radiation. And number 2 is dia punya distance. Lagi jauh, maka dia punya effect akan jadi lebih rendah. So back to the question, shouldn't be the mission untuk operator kalau dia tak fulfill requirement by the government. Kalau in Malaysia by the Nuclear and Malaysia Institute Nuclear and Technology. That's number 1. Number 2, those yang expose kepada ionizing radiation, dia kena pakai badge. Dia letak badge dekat dia punya dada tu, ionizing radiation badge. So kalau dia expose more than 20 millisievert, so the whole year dia tak boleh. Katakan by June dia dah ada 20 millisievert contoh. So the rest of the year memang dia tak boleh kerja dengan ionizing radiation. I hope I can that answer the question lah. So dia kena fulfill all the requirement by the authority before dia operate. Yeah. Ada lagi soalan apa ni Dr. Yus?
Yeah, still the same question. What about the effect to patient that
Okay.
in the upper building, upper floor?
Okay. Kalau dia depend on ionizing radiation, they very much depend on the dose, yeah. They very much depend on the dose. And kalau untuk patient, so I believe dia punya yang tak terlibat dalam ionizing radiation, so dia dianggap sebagai the standard, the public standard will be applied.
Okay. The
public standard will be applied. Kalau dia as a radio operator, is into X-ray machine punya operator, then actually the occupational standard apply. Occupational standard is 20 millisievert. For the patient standard yang tak terlibat dengan X-ray is 1 millisievert. So the meaning to say, kalau all the standard operating procedures was not followed in according to the best practice of ionization. So number 1, dose depend on the dose. The dose kalau just untuk X-ray machine is not so much. because X-ray machine, the dose is plus minus 0.001 millisievert. Tetapi kalau untuk CT scan is very much higher daripada X-ray machine. Kalau MRI mungkin tidak because dia lebih pada magnetic resonant imaging, non ionizing radiation. Because ionizing radiation tu dia banyak depend on the dose and type of radiation. For example, kalau radioactive is more lah. Example, those patient on radiotherapy example. Kalau patient yang menerima radioterapi, standard is not applicable. So they depend on the risk, whether the benefit versus the risk. So this need to be discussed between by the treating doctor dengan patient lah. Tetapi untuk case study kalau give scenario from the Malaysia perspective. Kita tak tahu macam mana di Indonesia kan. Kalau di Malaysia perspective, first and foremost, dia tak dapat license untuk beroperasi. Tapi katakan dia beroperasi juga, so dia kalau on the hospital setup, it is under the OSHA regulation, Occupational Safety and Health Act. So the authority under DOSH, Department of Occupational Safety and Health Act, dia boleh take action to give a stop work order to the hospital. Basic stop work order, tidak buat operasi X-ray, contoh. Yang kedua, kalau patient affected, that is considered as work-related illness, work-related disease, and dia boleh mengadu kepada dalam undang-undang, dia boleh dapat pampasan daripada SOCSO lah ataupun Social Security Organisation. At the same time, they can bring the issue to this civil court and they can sue the hospital why they do the practice, unsafe practice. Boleh sebenarnya. Dia dalam training kami untuk doctors, kami ada bentangkan kes-kes macam ni lah. Kalau untuk unsafe practice by the company, how they can mitigate the case, how they can sue. Bukan sue lah, kind of like case studies yang berlaku di Malaysia, di Singapore. Macam mana diorang sue, diorang boleh saman the company macam tu. So at the same time, kalau look at the holistic view sebenarnya, first and foremost, di tempat kerja itu sebenarnya dia kena ada polisi keselamatan sebenarnya. Di Malaysia, kita ada safety policy regulation. Dia ada kena buat. Yang kedua, dia kena ada safety committee regulation kat Malaysia. So kalau kes dalam hospital pun dia kena ada safety committee yang look after safety issue, dia punya prevention dan sebagainya. Jadi benda tu sangat asas. Yang ketiga, setiap kerja yang considered berbahaya, dia kena buat proper risk assessment. Yang ni yang kita nak buat, tetapi kita buat ni mostly on chemical aspect. Yang tadi on ionizing radiation.
Okay.
Saya harap dapat menjawab.
Yeah. Next question. There are some differences of TLV among countries between developed and developing countries.
Betul.
But the work hours is the same, 8 hours per day. What factors influence this TLV?
Oh yeah, this is a political issue, Dr. Yus. It's a political issue, It's a political issue because first there are two main agency lah yang produce standard in the US. I'm not talking about Europe or UK, whatever. In the US, one is under OSHA on the OSHA administrative is the authority, and the second one under SCGIH, American Government Conference of Industrial Hygienists. And SCGIH basically they are very active in research and they produce diorang punya diorang punya document tu of maybe every year, yeah. So and the standards normally is much lower compared to government practice, compared to the authority. But because they are not bound, they just do a study, purely study, and they propose the standard. But the authority normally they look into many factors, not only on the safety part, on the economic part, on the politic part, on the management part. So they need to, because if they do give a stringent standard, the company cannot fulfill the requirement. So the cannot in operation. Dia tak boleh buat operasi pun, kan? Jadi they need to, there are many stakeholders dalam standard ni. Satu majikan, satu pekerja, satu authority, there are so many. So they need to ambil jalan tengah lah. I give you example lah. Contoh macam standard for noise in Malaysia. Okay, the first noise exposure regulation in Malaysia was in 1989. 1989 kita ada noise exposure regulation. The permissible exposure limit at that time was 90 decibel. Now in 2019 dengan 1989 tu considered macam almost 30 years kan, 30 tahun. Betul kan? So the authority managed to bring down the standard or PEL level from 90 to 85 decibel. You see, just tak nak turunkan 5 decibel pun mengambil masa 30 tahun. Jadi sebenarnya agak susah jugalah. And we are actually way behind, tetapi there must be a certain step lah macam tu. It's very interesting. I teach this subject actually on the occupational exposure standard for doctors.
Okay, next question from Muhammad Nasir. Is there any biological indicator such as vegetation to know, to indicate that there are some toxic materials in ambient environment?
If I can understand, is there any biological exposure indicators for?
Yeah, such as what is it? Some kind of plants we could use to indicate that the environment and working environment is above the safety level.
Okay. If I can understand the question correctly, kan, whether there is a certain biological environmental index, BEI dipanggil, biological monitoring or biomarker of exposure for chemicals kan dekat tempat kerja. Yes, they do, but very limited. Very limited. Maybe we have 100,000 of chemicals, tetapi BI itu mungkin sedikit saja, dan we always refer to ACGIH dia punya dokumen on the availability of biological exposure index. Not all chemical ada biological exposure index. That's number one.
No. The question is asking about some kind of plants, tumbuhan atau vegetation, to indicate, to indicate there are some toxic chemicals above the safety level. Is there any example?
I'm not to be frank, I'm not sure because that's more on environmental toxicology.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for that. It's not in my knowledge.
Yeah. Next question from Ibu Ratna Yuliawati. Dampak terpapar hazard dari industri akan muncul setelah lama bekerja.
Correct.
Terus selain pemantauan NAB ya, threshold limit value, perlindungan apa yang efektif? The effective protection to workers.
Okay.
What kind of?
Okay. And first and foremost, the first step, okay, sebelum we discuss on the control measures, is to do a proper risk assessment. And the risk not only for chemical, tetapi on other domain of hazards. physical hazard, psychological hazard, ergonomic hazard, mechanical hazard, whatever, we need to do a proper risk assessment. So if we know that a certain chemical, memang certain chemical tu memang sangat bahaya kan, dia sangat berbahaya. Tetapi kalau the process actually is done within a controlled environment with no or minimum exposure to the workers, that might be safe. I give you example lah. This is a very simple example macam singa lah. Singa sangat bahaya kan, harimau sangat bahaya. Kalau harimau tu di dalam cage dekat zoo, walaupun harimau tu bahaya, kita selamat. Tetapi kalau singa tu berada di hutan ataupun dalam bandar, dia macam tu, tidak ada apa-apa control measures, so dia punya impact pun sangat bahaya kan, compared dengan yang dalam zoo. So similarly, same thing like chemicals, macam tu juga. So we need to ensure that the control measures is very, very efficient to as low as reasonably practicable. So to as low as reasonably practicable. Di dalam oil and gas, konsep of alat ataupun as low as reasonably practicable, dia ada a few standard to be achieved. Number one, kalau if possible, kita kena eliminate the hazard, if possible. Number two, kalau tak boleh, kita kena minimize the exposure. How to minimize? We need to ensure that the exposure must be below than occupational exposure limit, the exposure. Number two, the control measures, we need to give a proper control measures. Start with the engineering control measures. Number two, kalau if we give PPE or personal protective equipment, we need to ensure that a proper respiratory or respirator fit testing must be conducted. Wear and fit. Basically, they must able to wear properly, efficiently, and they are fit to use that kind of thing. Use in a proper manner, use for the proper purpose. I have a case study later how the actually workers misinterpret the hazard and use a different type of PPE, end up with the potential fatality. Okay, and at the same time, we know that certain chemical are carcinogenic, and if they are exposed to that certain chemical, then a proper medical examination need to be done. This is in Malaysia, need to be done every year, and the record need to be kept for 30 years. At the end of the day, we need to assess whether we need to accept the risk or not. Whether the risk is acceptable or not from both parties, from employer and from the employee. So we actually try our best to minimize as best as you could, but the workers need to make a decision whether to accept the risk or not. Yeah, as best as they could. I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah. The next question from Saveria Magdalena. She's asking how to minimize the use of toxic chemicals in fogging.
Oh, in fogging, again, that depends on the purpose. Okay, all chemicals. This is a very famous quote from Paracelsus, if I'm not mistaken. They said that actually all things are poison, and it very much depends on the dose. Similarly, that actually need a proper risk assessment juga. The basic thing is a risk assessment. You need to get what are the best industry practice for the fogging activities. And of course, if you look at the history, the malathion and so on, again, if I'm not mistaken, it's used in the as an orange agent in the Vietnam War. Yeah? So the effect basically affect the cholinergic nerve, muscarinic nerve, and so on. This is a very, very bad. I think that's depend on the authority punya. Authority must be based on the evidence-based scientific knowledge on the best of chemical to be used. Need to do a proper guideline on that. Similarly, in the medical field, if in Malaysia, we have what we call it CPG, the Clinical Best Practice Guideline. So same to industry, they must have a certain document on the industrial based practice fogging activities. They can refer to the certain organization like WHO ke, ILO ke, as a reference standard. Macam kalau how Shell sitting, because I'm from Shell kan, if we operate in a certain countries, contoh kalau kami pergi ke Nigeria, Shell kan, and first and foremost, Nigeria is considered as under the a developing country kan. They don't have proper standard, betul tak? Whatever standard lah, tak ada lah. Tak ada safety standard, tak ada environmental standard. So our stand for Shell, our stand is we use the company best practice standard. Kalau ada the national standard, we try to apply the national standard, but the standard itu, as best as we could, we will use the best between the two. Shell is actually been in industry for 100 years, kan? And Petronas baru dalam 40 years. Even Petronas, they also following Shell standard. So the Shell standard is quite stringent. We cannot really totally eliminate the hazard. If you look at the petrochemical industry, still ada benzene, ada toluene, ada xylene. And in a chemical plant, we normally call a BTX assessment lah. So-called benzene, toluene, and xylene assessment on the exposure part. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and the next question from Fitri Amalia. How to protect from hazard to communities living surround industry or chemicals?
Okay. This is very interesting. This is very interesting. There are two major events. Two disasters happen with regard to the so-called the industry disasters. Actually, there are many, but there are few which is common. Number one, I'm sure you have heard about the Bhopal industry.
Yeah.
Bhopal industry, the main chemical involved is MIC, methyl isocyanate. Okay, methyl isocyanate, and it causes fatalities to thousand of workers. That's number one. The interesting thing is, actually, the area, orang kampung yang duduk dulu situ. Kemudian industri come kan, datang kemudian dia buat kilang di situ. Okay, tapi sebenarnya yang duduk di tempat tu dulu adalah orang kampung kan. Tetapi kemudian ada industri datang. Okay, that's a conflict of interest lah, satu. Yang kedua, kalau industri contoh sebagai Chernobyl punya disaster, nuclear disaster in Ukraine kan, the punya disaster is very very big lah. Okay, how to solve the issue? First, you need to have a very strong government policy on that. In Malaysia, sorry, I'm using the Malaysia as a reference because I'm not very familiar with the Indonesia situation. Though there is a regulation, they call it CIMA, Control Industrial Major Accident Hazard. Okay, all the industries before they operate, they need to fulfill with the CIMA regulation. Control of Industrial Major Accident Hazard. So they define dalam tu apa yang industry need to do. For example, they need to do like environmental, assessment, environmental impact assessment, the human impact assessment. Then after that, they need to ensure the control measures are efficient. That is documented in the law lah. Whether this is implemented or not, that will be a different story. And number four, maybe they need to do a kind of like communication. They need to educate all the workers, and they need to have a proper disaster management, that sort of things lah. Do you have this similar act in Indonesia?
Yeah, AMDAL we use AMDAL.
Okay, AMDAL. So I think the
Analisis
same.
mengenai dampak lingkungan, ya.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the last question. So
Okay.
you may
Can I
continue.
just sharing
Yeah.
how many time left actually that I use?
Maybe
can I
about
just
30 minutes.
Okay, maybe I try to do it fast, maybe in 15 to 30 minutes. So let's say this industrial visit. Okay. Okay, now these are the thing. The risk assessment start with hazard identification, assess and evaluation, control and response. This is the same concept that we use for every hazards. For example, katakan kita nak masuk plant, the safety induction or safety briefing is important. You need to understand the existing hazardous chemical, the safety precaution, do's and don'ts, or maybe specific training needed. For example, if you want to go to offshore environment, offshore plant, or offshore rig, they need to attend a certain training. We call it as helicopter underwater escape training, because this is survival training or boat or sea survival training. Because it's not easy to go there. In case of in between transportation nak pergi sana tu, ada helikopter tu jatuh dalam laut kan. We have few incident for information yang passenger mati dan juga pilot mati sebab helikopter jatuh. Okay. Dan kita boleh tanyalah kepada safety officer, safety manager, apa-apa yang kita nak clarify. Masa kita ada safety briefing. Dalam gambar ni, this is actually the visit untuk chemical plant. What missing kat sini adalah, this is refinery. What missing kat sini adalah dia tidak ada hazardous chemical warning sign dekat entrance of chemical storage area. So meaning to say that even from the beginning, the first impression, before you enter tu dah tidak ada chemical warning sign, but you know that actually the plant is considered as hazardous plant. So this is you need to bring this to the management. Number two, before you go to the plant, ask on the chemical registry. Kalau ada company tu dia ada all the chemical records being kept in a very proper manner in certain places, and everything is there, we know that the company is very, very good. So what you need to do actually, look at the hazard inventory, look at the type of chemical, look at the type of toxicity. This is a very good practice by the plant company. Okay, same again, look at the warning sign. If in Malaysia, this need to be, warning sign need to be in 2 languages. Satu bahasa Inggeris, yang kedua is bahasa Malaysia, and they got the specification as well. Then tak boleh merokok, tak boleh ada kamera. Kenapa tak boleh ada kamera kalau visit plant? Because kita tak boleh bawa kamera tu kalau plant and chemical, sebab dia ada macam akan initiate ignition, it can cause fire. Satu. Yang kedua, lebih pada safety lah untuk security mereka. Okay. These are the example. Kalau pergi di kilang, memang biasa nampak ni. Dia tidak ada labeling yang betul. Okay, some actually chemical being stored dalam botol-botol air kan. Ni common lah, especially kalau tuan-tuan kalau pergi di ladang di ladang, orang biasa buat macam ni sebenarnya kan. I'm not sure in Indonesia lah, tapi kat Malaysia common.
The same, the same problems.
Yeah. So this is macam education lah ni. Kalau macam ni, macam mana nak tengok chemical, tak tengok, pertama kita tak tahu apa hazard. Yang kedua, kita tak tahu apa dia punya level of toxicity kan. Ni similarly, ini dekat plant juga, sama juga, tidak ada label. Kalau ataupun ada label, dia dah faded dah. Dia apa tu dah memang tak nampak jenis chemical. Ya. I go faster lah. Because again, sebelum kita pergi pada mana-mana industri, you need to have a knowledge, certain knowledge, background knowledge on the what kind of chemical on that particular industry. Example like electroplating, kita tahu dia ada acid, chromic acid, okay, dia ada alkali, dia ada solvent, dia ada cyanates, dia ada chromium, ada cadmium. So bila kita tahu, then automatically in our mind, then we need to know actually what are the potential adverse effect of those chemical. Okay, for cadmium, okay, contohlah kalau cadmium, it may affect the bone actually. Okay, bone basically is a secondary to maybe some issue from the primary organ. Okay, and it may cause cancer as well. Okay, lung cancer, and both for the chromium and so cadmium. Same goes to lead and and also solvent. Begitu juga kalau kita pergi pada spray painting. What you can see here, even though dia buat dekat isolated environment, tetapi orang lain tak terkena, tapi dia is one-to-one. So we need to look at the control measures, type of PPE use, what are the possible effect and so on. Yeah. This is in a semiconductor industry. So there are so many hazards. Okay, this is just an example, just an example of hazard in a semiconductor industry. There's so many type of industries, yeah. So at least you need to know the common chemical or common hazard. This is more on chemical hazard. I'm sure if you look at the other type of hazard, boleh juga macam ergonomics, ya. Tengok the way how they sit, kan. It can be a safety hazard. Normally kalau di industri, the common hazard adalah slip and fall. Dia tergelincir or trip and fall. That's more on safety hazard. Yang lagi satu common adalah if they are working at height, dia kerja di tempat tinggi dan kemudian dia akan jatuh. This is in plastic industry. So look at the what are the chemicals being used in the various activities. If you do the walkthrough survey, pergi di kilang, you start from the beginning of the your visit up to the end of the process, including the disposal of chemical. So here in a thermoplastic resin too, normally they are using like polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride, polystyrene, styrene, yeah. And actually from here they have multiple fumes. Contoh macam PVC. So what are things inside the fume too is include like hydrogen chloride, styrene. Sama juga dengan fire retardant tu, dia ada phenol and butadiene, and most of the effects actually it causing a local irritation effect to the upper respiratory system and juga on the skin part. Yeah. Kalau di agriculture sectors, most are pesticide. Pesticide, it can be anything. In fact, kalau di Malaysia dia dah ban a certain chemical like paraquat, okay, because of the effects. And of course, there are other type of hazard like heat stress, exposure to animal and plants, tool and machinery hazard, noise and ergonomic hazard. It can cause work-related musculoskeletal disorders. Yeah, it's not easy. I think when we visited the plant, because they know our visit kan, so you can see they are using macam pakai cover off sikit-sikit. But in the actual situation, kalau masa kami tak datang, bukan macam ni lah kot. Mesti lagi teruk ni. Ni masa kami datang, masa inspection dengan authority, memang dia pakai betul-betul lah. Tapi kalau masa hari biasa, dia guna kontainer yang lain, okay, yang bukan sepatutnya. And kesiannya bukan saja pekerja akan terlibat, tetapi kanak-kanak yang berada di persekitaran tersebut, dia akan minum dan sebagainya, kan. So dia akan menyebabkan toxic effects lah to siapa yang injection lah, due to injection. And dalam pesticide normally, kalau dalam toxicology kan, kita pesticide ni macam mana dia masuk dalam badan. Yang pertama dia based on inhalation. Tetapi yang kedua by skin absorption. In particular dekat bahagian genitalia area, dekat bahagian pinggang dan di situ dia ada 11.8%. Bukan then dia boleh absorb melalui skin. This is common kalau dalam kita pakai macam fogging activities dan cara chemical masuk ke dalam badan kita bukan saja melalui inhalation tetapi melalui skin juga, in particular di bahagian genitalia. And in fact masa dia buat fogging tu, they very much depend on dia punya wind punya direction. Angin tu datang daripada mana. Yang kedua, what type of respirator yang dia pakai. Kalau dia pakai, tengok jenis particulate ataupun dia ada guna macam cartridge, tengoklah macam mana. Kadang-kadang tak pakai langsung, ataupun the most, kalau di Malaysia dia cuma pakai towel, dia panggil morning towel, dia hanya tutup saja macam tu kan. So the degree of protection memang tak ada lah. Okay. Seterusnya, selepas kita identify, we need to monitor dan evaluate. Kalau dalam monitor tu, kita tengok first, tengok dia punya what type of hazard, what kind of the effects that can be caused by the exposure, the magnitude of the severity. Number two, on the exposure, how much, and and how actually the exposure happen, what kind of PPE that being used, what kind of control measures. After that we can measure the risk. Okay. I think this is a very basic in fundamental toxicology. The exposure very much depend on the dose level, duration of exposure, then also the intensity plus minus the control measures. Now, at the end of the day, okay, I'm just asking whether in Indonesia using the similar approach on the risk assessment method.
Yeah.
Okay, you have severity, but most, kalau dalam textbook, they only put people, but because this is actually from Shell, we also put asset, environment and reputation as on the consequence part. Okay, the likelihood depend on whether the incident has been happened in industry, occurred in industry, incident has occurred in our company. This is how we do for every activities. In fact, at the planning level, sebelum kami buat sesuatu aktiviti, seismic survey ke, drilling ke, or maybe as simple as at catering, di tempat makan macam restoran ataupun di kantin, di offshore kan, sebelum kami buat apa, kami buat yang ni dulu. Kami buat yang ni dulu to ensure that actually the risk is managed to as low as reasonably practicable. Kalau kita dah anticipate the problem, dan senanglah. Kalau tak, the action is more macam reactive. Okay, for example, like this one, we are in the exposure assessment topic. A worker is insulating a part using silicone-based substance for almost 5 hours in a hot environment. He's not wearing any personal protective equipment except for safety helmet and shoes. The task involves cutting the silicone base substance into specific sizes and attaching them onto the part. So the question here, okay, what are the factors that influence the exposure in this picture? Now, kalau tengok dalam gambar ni, saya cakap dalam bahasa Malaysia, kalau tengok dalam gambar ni, pertama dia punya exposure kepada silikon. That dia hazard lah, okay. Exposure duration adalah 5 jam. Kemudian control measures tak ada. Dia tak pakai any respirator or any PPE except safety helmet. Tapi safety helmet does not kata protect him untuk inhale silicon. Okay. Yang ketiga mungkin the environment itu hot environment. So the exposure should be more kan. Okay. The exposure is more lah. So that is the factor. So dalam keadaan macam ni, apa yang kita buat adalah even without measuring how much is the exposure level, we know that actually the exposure is relatively high. Okay, exposure is relatively high. Okay, and dia tak pakai glove pun juga kan. So susah. This is common lah kalau di Malaysia. Okay. Oh, ada jawapan di sini, okay. The route of entry, inhalation, duration 5 jam, ventilation is not good, not wearing PPE, kan, what environment and so on. Okay, similarly, this is more at kalau pergi di industry in confined space, in confined space. Okay, before we go to the confined space punya issues, let me look at the case studies kat sini kan. Okay, this is part of under if you still remember the diagram. First, we need to understand two basic concepts: toxicokinetic and dose response relationship. Under toxicokinetic, the first concept is absorption. Okay, how much you are exposed. Absorption either by inhalation, by skin, by ingestion, whatever. So that is actually the route of entry. So in this case, we are actually at the toxicokinetic concept at absorption punya domain. Okay. So the question is, what is the concentration of trichloroethylene or TCE? TCE ni adalah solvent ataupun organic solvent di dalam confined space ataupun ruang terkurung. Confined space kalau dalam definisinya adalah satu tempat yang hanya ada satu lubang ataupun satu pintu untuk keluar masuk. Okey, dia macam ruang terkurung. Dia boleh besar, dia boleh kecil lah. Tengok kontena tu besar mana ataupun tidak. Kalau di oil and gas, normally kita simpan petrol kat situ ataupun crude oil kan, and dia punya ketinggian, height tu, tinggi sangat tu, mungkin dalam 20 meters, tinggi. So dalam kes ni, ni biasanya akan effect kepada orang yang buat tanker cleaner. Dia tanker cleaner ni is not easy job lah. It's a manual, heavy duty job. Normally kalau di oil and gas tu dia akan suruh kontraktor buat. Jadi kontraktor tu kena bersihkan all the tanker, sama ada kat darat ataupun di vessel yang bawa minyak kan. Kalau dia bawa minyak daripada satu tempat ke satu tempat. Contoh daripada Malaysia dia akan pergi kepada katakan daripada pergi ke satu tempat B lah, kata Japan kan. So minyak tu dah dihantar di sana, tapi sebab crude oil tu ada banyak sedimen yang tertinggal dalam tank tu. So dia kena bersihkan tank tu. Dalam tu macam-macam solvent ada. So kadang-kadang mereka bersihkan tu, walaupun company tu company besar, diorang tak bekalkan respirator. Diorang just masuk and wholesale dia pakai morning towel. This is untuk tunjukkan how dangerous is the activity. Kalau dalam tu ada trichloroethylene, berapa banyak dia punya concentration kalau dia punya vapor pressure dalam at 20 Celsius adalah 59. So kita bagi saja what atmosphere is 760. So TCE concentration is 59 over 760 kali dengan 1 million. This is part per million lah. Part per million which is about dalam 77,000 ppm. Yeah. And this is the acceptable limit of exposure 8 jam adalah 50. You can see is 1,500 more of yield value. So bayangkan kalau pekerja just masuk without measuring dia punya ni kan, dia punya expose tu memang teruk sangatlah, and immediate fatality mungkin. That's why dalam confined space ini pun dia tak pakai PPE ya, dia tak pakai PPE. So dia kena ada measure dia punya toxic gases plus oxygen, and most of the time the equipment tu dipanggil intestinal measurement. Dia ada alarm system kat situ sama ada boleh masuk ataupun tidak. So kebanyakan kalau di petrochemical plant dia measure tu, kemudian kalau misalnya kata level tu tinggi, dia akan buat purging activity dulu lah. Purging dia kena keluarkan whatever gas. And you need to understand sometimes gas is certain chemical gas is heavy than oxygen. Dia berada di bawah ya. Okay. Similarly kalau di industri contoh di sini kita dalam topik evaluation applied toxicokinetic ada dalam kerja 8 jam woodworking ni normally dia wood dust ni, what the effect of wood dust, it affect the respiratory system and sometimes is considered as carcinogen as well. Dia berada di 3 unit yang berbeza. Unit pertama di bahagian yang untuk band saw dalam 2 jam, circular saw tu macam gergaji dalam 1 jam. Kemudian sander tu untuk macam dia pasir untuk bagi kayu tu bagi kayu tu bersih ataupun licin lah dalam 3 jam. So dia hanya bekerja kat situ dalam 6 jam, yang 2 jam lagi tu dia di luar dekat dengan storage area. Kemudian dia measure kat bensor tu 3.8 dia punya exposure monitoring This is time weighted average, dia pakai personal monitoring. Circular saw is about 4.4 dan juga sander dalam 3 jam. So the question is berapa dia punya time weighted average. I just asking kalau di sana kita buat tak aktiviti macam ni, Dr. Yus?
In industrial setting, in industry.
Yes. Yeah. Yang ni kalau sebenarnya this is concept of toxicokinetic. Kita nak tahu berapa banyak yang kita akan inhale. So kita akan measure sama ada dia itu adalah di bawah paras standard ataupun above standard. Kalau above standard, then mungkin kena stop work order ataupun kena ada control measures yang lain. Kalau misalnya kata di bawah allowable standard, then dia boleh teruskan kerja tersebut lah. This is considered is part of requirement dalam Malaysia punya law, kena buat personal exposure monitoring. So basically this is applied toxicokinetic concept in industry. For example, like this case, time weighted average is 4, tetapi exposure standard is 5. So 4 is below than 5. Maksudnya keadaan dia masih dibenarkan lah. So existing control need to be maintained. So kalau kita dah dapat data ni, baru kita boleh buat a proper suggestion, proposal on the control measures. Kalau kita based on qualitative assessment boleh juga, tapi the best is still a quantitative assessment. Okay, this is memang a very good personal exposure monitoring. I believe kalau di environmental toxicology, you also doing the same thing kan? You buat exposure assessment Mungkin dekat soil, kat tanah, dekat water dan sebagainya. And this one at environmental and in occupational setting. Okay. Okay, we go for control measures. This is a very quick one. This is part of the control measures in the lab. So this is just a general ventilation, segregation dengan apa tu, dengan dia letakkan macam glass, you know. This is just some example, yeah. Okay, this is how they actually put their PPE. Kalau tengoklah. Kemudian walaupun ada respirator di situ kan, tapi dia kena ada maintenance record di situ. The workers kena tahu cara nak pakai. Kalau ada janggut yang panjang tak sesuai untuk pakai respirator. So janggut tu kena dicukur supaya dia ada seal, tight seal dekat dengan muka dia. At the same time juga medical examination need to be conducted, kena buat disebabkan oleh kadang-kadang pekerja tu ada asma, ada penyakit lelah, ada penyakit yang lain yang tak sesuai untuk menggunakan respirator. Respirator ni pula dia tak boleh share, tak boleh dikongsi bersama dengan pekerja-pekerja yang lain. So again, this is the concept of toxicokinetic. Basically kita nak menghalang exposure melalui inhalation, ya, dalam bab absorption. This is two type of respirator yang dipakai di industri. Yang pertama, atmosphere supplying. Basically kita memberikan oksigen dalam bentuk kita gunakan oksigen tank ataupun kita daripada luar dia panggil line fed breathing apparatus. Yang satu lagi tu kita panggil sebagai safe contained breathing apparatus, ya. So dalam hal ni kita kena identify berapa banyak oksigen level yang di tempat tersebut, sebab kita kena identify. Sebab kalau yang satu lagi tu yang air purifying tu dia ada yang gunakan untuk particulate matters kan, ada yang guna untuk vapor gas. So kita kena identify sama ada inhalation tu awal-awal dalam slide tadi kita katakan kita kena identify sama ada dia based by inhalation tu adakah kita ambil particulate matter ataupun kita ambil vapor atau gas. Kita boleh actually ada juga respirator yang menggabungkan kedua-duanya. Boleh untuk vapor dan juga untuk particulate matter, ya. Contoh di sini dalam satu kes, okey. Saya akan bacakan kes study ni. Ada seorang pekerja tu dia untuk dia apply primer. Primer ni adalah macam dalam gambar tu, sebelum kita cat dinding kita nak cat dinding simen di rumah kita, kita kena letak primer dulu sebenarnya. Primer tu kena letak baru kita boleh cat. Kalau tidak dinding tu bila kita cat dia akan jadi pecah-pecah, dia tak jadi cantik lah. Okey, dan biasanya kalau dalam primer tu kita gunakan chemical yang bernama 1,1-trichloroethene. Dalam kes ni pekerja ni dia cat primer trichloroethene tu di dalam concrete wall 5 kaki 5 kaki buka, tapi dia punya kedalaman adalah 8 kaki. So dia cat, dia masuk dalam tu mungkin melalui tangga ke dalam tu, dan dia kena ingat because dia ada satu saja pintu atas untuk buka. So dalam dia punya ni adalah sebenarnya dia adalah confined space. Confined space tu kita define tadi adalah dia hanya ada satu pintu masuk dan pintu keluar saja. So now pekerja ni dia cat primer, tapi dia first apa dia punya mistake, dia tak measure dia punya gas, toxic gas level dan juga oksigen di dalam primer tu berapa. Okey. Dan kita tahu trichloroethene tu kan dia boleh menurunkan menaikkan paras oksigen level. Yang kedua, dia punya gas adalah heavier than oxygen. Okay. Now, masalah dia guna air purifying half phase respirator. Tidak diterangkan dia pakai particulate ke method ataupun vapor method kan. Jadi the initial assessment tu dah salah dah, sebab dalam assessment sepatutnya dia kena monitor dulu dia punya toxic gas dan juga air concentration, berapa level oksigen. Dalam ni level of oksigen dia sangat rendah lah kan. So bila dia masuk ke dalam tu, sebab dia tidak ada oksigen level punya supply, so dia terus become unconscious daripada toxic vapor. Kawan dia datang, ni biasa common, datang untuk tolong pekerja tersebut, tak pakai langsung respirator dan become unconscious, tak sedar diri. Nasib baik fire department datang in time. So bila dia measure, yang ni masalah tu, bila dia measure dia tengok trichloroethane tu, dia punya level dah 80,000 part per million. Dan standard dia untuk immediate dangerous to life adalah 1000 ppm. So meaning to say that level dia adalah 80 times more untuk menyebabkan kematian lah, sebab dia punya standard adalah hanya 1000 saja. Dua-duanya selamat alhamdulillah. Tapi the issue di sini adalah mistake yang dibuat untuk tidak assess dia punya toxic gas level and also oxygen level. That mistake number one. Number two, bila dia tak measure tu, dia gunakan air purifying half phase respirator instead of dia gunakan oxygen supply. Kan? That's mistake number two lah. Mistake number three, dia tak realise bahawa yang ni adalah confined space. Dia tak, kalau benda tu di open space, ada general ventilation, mungkin the effects is not so much lah. But this is a open space. Jadi this is an enclosed space, confined space. Jadi all the toxic gases dia just maintain kat dalam tu saja. Now, saya teringat kalau tuan-tuan biasa pergi haji kan, ataupun umrah di Mekah, sebenarnya Mekah tu adalah macam valley ataupun lembah. Lembah kan, dia semua orang turun pergi dekat Kaabah kan. Jadi sebenarnya dia punya environment ataupun air quality kat situ sebenarnya tak berapa bagus sangat. Sebab dia terperangkap dalam valley tu. Walaupun dia open space, what we call it is a ping-pong effect. Ping-pong effect. Kalau kita main ping-pong tu ke bola, dia hanya pergi kat situ saja. Kan? Itu sebab kalau kita tak sihat, kita banyak batuk, once batuk lepas tu ada ramai lagi jemaah-jemaah umrah ataupun haji akan batuk juga. Itu open space dalam kawasan yang besar. Cuma sebab masa kita buat umrah tu, kita sembahyang dekat-dekat, ramai sangat kan. Tapi kalau di confined space ni, dia punya efek lagi-lagi teruk. Ya? Saya dah explain, saya tak payah explain lagi yang ni. Kemudian, okay. Ya ini contoh ada, yang ni dalam office environment. Walaupun kita nak discuss dalam industry environment, yang ini kita discuss dalam office environment. Ada 3 pekerja, dia kerja dalam the same office. Dan dia komplain macam sakit kepala, sakit tekak, dan ada hidung yang berdarah kan. Dan setiap pekerja kata keadaannya lagi teruk masa dia bekerja during the daytime. Tapi bila balik rumah, dia okey. Bila sampai hujung minggu, dia tak ada simptom langsung. So meaning to say ada something yang berlaku di tempat kerja. Kan? Ada something yang berlaku di tempat kerja. Yang ni kita namakan sebagai poor indoor air quality. Poor indoor air quality. And dalam walaupun tajuk kita ada dalam industrial environment, tetapi saya masukkan juga untuk office environment. We cannot underestimate office environment juga sebenarnya. We need to look at system like a building ventilation system or heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Tapi tadi saya tengok building dekat tadi dalam video awal-awal, dia nampak di universiti dia banyak tingkap kan, okey lah. Biasanya indoor air quality ni berlaku dekat macam US atau hotel-hotel yang tertutup. Ada 4 season, ada musim sejuk, ada musim panas. So dalam musim panas tu normally diorang cuba untuk mengekalkan panas tu. Jadi diorang tak banyak tingkap. Dia tak banyak tingkap, so dia tak pasang aircon dan sebagainya. Itu yang dia punya angin ataupun udara tu terperangkap di dalam building. So kalau ada demam, ada batuk, memang satu building akan kenalah. Okay. Kena tengok juga building structure, interior and also finishing. Sama dia building lama ataupun modern building, dia ada kesan dia juga sebenarnya. Kadang kalau building yang lama tu, sebab dia lama sangat, kadang-kadang dia menggunakan macam asbestos. Lepas tu sebelum tahun 84, zaman-zaman dulu, mereka menggunakan cat yang ada plumber, ada lead. Ada lead di dalam cat. Sekarang cat ada organic solvent kan, tapi dulu dia ada lead. So bila ada lead tu, jadi kadang-kadang bila dah lama sangat cat tu akan pecah. So lead tu juga akan expose kepada dos yang ada di dalam building tersebut. So kalau sekarang ni dia guna organic solvent, sama juga. Cuma sekarang ni dia ada yang water based cat, water based painting. Kemudian occupant generated pollution, kalau ramai sangat dalam situ, dia akan ada carbon dioxide. Source of pollutant of odor, dia sama ada indoor ataupun outdoor, and look also into dia punya physical punya index, tengok humidity, lighting, temperature. Kemudian ada setengah daripada kita juga ada yang asma dan sebagainya. And indoor air quality, poor indoor air quality ni adalah sesuatu yang betul lah. Bukan kalau di kampung kadang okey sebab dia punya environment, kita rumah-rumah kampung dia banyak tingkap. Rumah bandar kadang-kadang dia letak macam cuma cermin saja daripada luar. So it's panas sebenarnya because tidak ada ventilation. Okay, this is the standard yang kita dalam indoor air quality. Dia ada physical parameters, chemical contaminants, biological contaminant and ventilation. So termasuklah dalam tu, so we need, kalau kita ada masalah macam ni, so we need apart from the qualitative assessment, ada questionnaire untuk indoor air quality, but at the same time ada yang kita kena buat measurement, contoh suhu udara, relative humidity, air movement, chemical like carbon monoxide, formaldehyde. Biasa formaldehyde ni kalau tuan-tuan ni kebanyakan dalam furniture yang baru, kita akan, ataupun kalau kita naik kereta yang baru, kereta kita baru beli, kita akan terasa macam bau kereta ataupun bau furniture atau bau perabot yang baru. Sebenarnya yang kita bawa tu adalah formaldehyde. Ozone, okay, satu lagi, and also respirable particulate matter, less than 10 ppm, and total volatile organic compound, TVOC. Other thing like macam the bacterial count and also total fungal. Okay, I think this is my, okay, I got another few slide. Okay, setelah kita visit kilang tu, we need to first we need to identify, confirm yang hazard ada. We need to complete our risk assessment tadi. Okay, that risk assessment on the chemicals kan. Tapi at the same time, we need to identify actually pekerja mana yang terlibat. So dengan dua ni, then kita boleh propose action kepada plant manager. And this is normally done by us in Shell. Kita contoh, kita ada assessment unit, nama company, contoh company ABC, location kat mana. Okay, assessment unit mana. So kita kena senaraikan apa hazard yang kita jumpa. Contoh kita jumpa hazard silika dekat dengan quarry contohnya. So kita kena describe lah hazard tu macam mana. Okay. Example, kalau hazard tu dia punya intensity or exposure tinggi, then okay, control measure is not good. Okay, and and also very much depend on dia punya exposure level, sama ada acute silicosis, sorry, accelerated silicosis, okay, ataupun chronic silicosis. Dia punya risk assessment matrix itu kita dekat mana, sama ada high, medium ataupun low. Untuk silika, apa dia punya exposure standard, apa control measures dia. That is yang sepatutnya yang kita buat lah. Kemudian kita ada satu lagi table yang summarize everything yang kita buat. Everything yang kita buat tu, so kita kena ada checklist macam ni. So at the end of the day, bila kita buat macam ni, it is a very documented, very systematic, then we can prioritize action measures. Kat mana kita nak fokus. So we do the same thing in our environment in offshore. So even in the drilling activities ke, seismic activities ke, semua kita buat macam ni. And then I think we can prioritize the action. Okay. So kalau kita dah identify, contoh macam silika tadi, kita identify the risk is high, so we need to buat recommendation. Okay. Our recommendation then should be viewed by the plant operator whether they can accept, mereka boleh menerima tak kita punya cadangan. Kemudian kalau yes, dan kita kena ada responsible person untuk rectify the problem ataupun yang ambil dia punya action matters, kena ada target date dan kena ada date completed. Kalau tak, dia just on paper saja. Dia just on paper. This is very good untuk government authority lah kalau dia ada macam ni. Kalau kita as consultant pun, kita ada checklist, so it is a living document rather than simpan dalam file saja. Because kita kena buat follow up dan sebagainya. Okay, Alhamdulillah kita ada 50 slide dan sebagaimana saya janji tadi, 12.30, 24, minta maaf.
Yeah.
Back to you, Dr. Yus.
Yeah, terima kasih. Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there any more question? Please raise your hand if you have any question. Silakan kalau masih ada yang mau ditanyakan ke Dr. Agus Salim. Tadi apa yang sudah dijelaskan sangat menyeluruh ya, mulai dari basic sampai tadi melakukan visitnya ke industri, kemudian membuat laporan dan bagaimana instrumennya seperti apa, tindak lanjutnya bagaimana, dan juga sudah ada contoh-contoh kasus yang sudah diberikan. Silakan, apakah masih ada pertanyaan? I think it's clear enough. Ya, mohon sharing materi ya. Nanti materinya akan kita kirim ke email masing-masing bersama dengan sertifikatnya ya. Untuk nanti kalau mau menyimak lagi bisa dibuka di YouTube FKM official channel. So we also done this by live streaming by YouTube. So jadi kalau mau mereview, mengingat lagi apa yang sudah disampaikan, bisa disimak di YouTube-nya. Apakah ada yang kurang jelas? Kalau tidak ada, mungkin saya bisa simpulkan ya. Apa yang tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Dr. Salim. Jadi tadi yang pertama, basic toksikologi itu sebagai basicnya dalam kita memahami dan bisa memberikan perlindungan ke kesehatan karena adanya paparan ya. Ada hazard di dalam lingkungan industri, hazardnya bisa physical, chemical, or biological. Meskipun ada hazard yang lain, tetapi yang berhubungan dengan toksikologi di sini tadi 3 hazard itu. Kemudian tadi untuk kita bisa melakukan preventionnya, pencegahan terhadap efek kesehatan ataupun accident atau yang lainnya, maka kita perlu yang pertama adalah melakukan risk assessment ya. Kita melakukan yang pertama tadi ada exposure assessment, bisa secara kualitatif ataupun kuantitatif. kualitatif dengan menanyakan ya historinya seperti apa ke pekerjanya, kuantitatifnya bisa dengan melakukan pengukuran kualitas lingkungan kerjanya, atau pada pekerjanya ya dengan melakukan personal monitoring. Kemudian ya seperti itu. Tadi yang menjadi basic ada dua hal ya, basic konsepnya, yaitu memahami tentang toksikokinetikanya dari suatu chemical yang jadi mulai dari absorpsi, kemudian distribusi, metabolisme dan ekskresinya, kemudian juga memahami tentang hubungan antara dosis dengan responnya seperti apa. Misalnya kalau noise itu bagaimana, kalau yang lainnya seperti apa. Mungkin itu ya, apalagi ya. Ya, dan mungkin perbedaannya ya kalau di lingkungan mungkin kalau di lingkungan ambien standarnya cuma satu, tetapi kalau di lingkungan kerja ada 3 macam standar ya. Kalau nggak salah seperti itu. Jadi untuk yang standar tertinggi, kemudian batas amannya dan action level ya. Jadi action level itu 50% dari batas amannya atau nilai ambang batasnya, yang mana itu harus dilakukan tindakan untuk mencegah efek-efek yang membahayakan tadi. Ya, saya rasa itu. Kalau tidak ada lagi yang pertanyaan, mungkin saya ucapkan terima kasih sekali. Thank you very much for your sharing of knowledge, sharing of your experience, and in oil and gas company. As a consultant also, maybe next time you could visit us to Semarang, to Universitas Diponegoro. We will wait for this moment, okay. Waktu saya kembalikan lagi kepada MC.
Okay, thank you very much for Mr. Agus Salim as our speaker and Bu Yusniar as our moderator. And ladies and gentlemen, maybe we can take a virtual photo for a second time. Please to all participants and attendants to turn on the camera. Okay, maybe we can wait until 11:51. We're gonna take a documentation for a second time. Okay, let's start with the formal style. I will count 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much for all attendance. And I remind you all to be able to fill out the attendance list that has been shared in the Zoom chat as a condition to get a certificate. Finally, we come to the end of this event. On behalf of the committee, we apologize if there are shortcomings or mistakes in organizing this event. And we don't forget to thank you, speaker, lecturers, and all participants who were present until the final session of the activity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your coming and your nice attention. Hopefully, this morning's activity can be useful for all of us. It has been my pleasure to host this event. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon all. Bye.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Agus. See you next time.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Karisi.
Yes, thank you, Bu. Thank you, Mr. Agus Salim.
Pak Lali, Pak Muhammad Nasir, dan semuanya. Terima kasih. See you.
Makasih, Bu.
Ya, sama-sama. Terima kasih. Izin leave.